on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and he did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 4th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver. It is indeed February.
Now, school stabbing horror. Tributes are pouring in for the 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose, who was stabbed to death at All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield.
Parents, students and members of the community have been pouring into this school to pay tribute to 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose, who was fatally stabbed at this school yesterday, with police investigations continuing.
Elsewhere, US officials strike an extraordinary migrant deal with El Salvador. The country will accept deportees from any country, including dangerous criminals. Well, should the UK wake up and do the same?
Rayner rules on Islam. Yes, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is set to create a council to tackle Islamophobia. But could a new definition of Islamophobia stifle criticism of religion and free speech?
And a panel of international medical experts today claim there's no evidence Lucy Letby murdered a single baby. They say the deaths can be explained by natural causes and substandard care. We'll have the latest. I mean, I'm sick. I don't know about you, but I'm sick of hearing that children are being killed or stabbed or involved in awful violence just going to school. And it doesn't matter where in the country you are, it seems.
I mean, we've seen it in Wales, we've seen it in Yorkshire, Leeds, Sheffield. Of course, we've seen it in London. You'd think that schools would be the safest place for children to be. When families send their kids off in the morning, you would expect they would be in safe hands. And just time and time again, we see children bringing knives into school and complete disorder running riot in what should be, you know, a playground or a place of learning.
Absolutely, and it's the children, violent against each other, but also teachers can find themselves at risk. Dangerous children coming into the school with weapons, just violence. I mean, what do we do about this? Do we really want to get to a place where we have metal detectors as mandatory? I know in some inner city schools they already have that type of thing. Have police at the front of the school. I mean, is that really where we are now in Britain? Perhaps it is.
I mean, we know there are metal detectors in many American schools. We know American schools have to do drills in case of school shooting. Are we going to end up having not just the fire drill, but the stabbing drill in our schools? And more to the point, there are going to be the same tedious voices saying we need to restrict the sale of knives, that knives are too sharp, that no kitchen should have knives, that we should all do with spoons. At what point do we realise it's not the knives, it's the people? And at what point do we find particularly the incredibly violent elements in our society and, frankly, remove them from society?
You know, it was Idris Elba, wasn't it, the other day, who was saying we need to round the ends of our knives. So we all need to blunt the edges of our knives in order to stop knife crime. Sorry, that is not the problem. That is not the flipping problem.
No.
I mean, for goodness sake, something's going wrong with the way we're raising our children. Something's going wrong in these schools. Perhaps a lack of discipline, I don't know. But just the value of life being so low among some children and teenagers and adults is just so depressing. Life is a life.
It's incredibly depressing. And also there's been a social movement in the last decade or two to say we shouldn't exclude naughty children or violent children. They should all be kept in the school because it's best for them. At what point do we need to ask what's best for all children and actually exclude the violent elements? That might well be a place to start.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a parent of a good kid at a school, I would want, you know, that anyone who's violent being turfed out. But anyway, let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say, but it is the news headlines.
Emily, thank you. The top stories. Police are continuing to question a teenager after a 15-year-old boy died in a fatal stabbing at a school in Sheffield. The victim was named as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Tributes poured in at the scene and on social media with flowers, candles and balloons laid on a wall outside the school. Sophie Wilgoose, Harvey's sister, has said, "My heart is broken to a million pieces." Stop and search data reveals children as young as 10 have been found carrying bladed weapons. Last year alone, just over 100 cases of youths between 10 and 17 years old were found with weapons. Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury Richard Fuller spoke to GB News.
I lived in America for some time, and they had even worse instances of school shootings. And it's such a tragedy. It traumatizes local communities because parents then have to send their kids to school the very next day or the week after. And it's always going to be in the back of your mind, can it happen another time at school or another local school? I just worry that we always think national government's got the answer, that somehow if we put some people in Whitehall to think about it, the answer will come. Actually, maybe we should just make sure that head teachers have that power. They know what's going on in their local school. They know where there may be a risk. Maybe we should give more power to people who are, on the front line, closer than expecting national policies to be the answer.
The case of convicted child serial killer Letby is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice. The Criminal Cases Review Commission received an application from her lawyers yesterday. Police notes have revealed she was absent for more than a third of suspicious incidents at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others. Today, a panel of international medical experts has given alternative causes of death in several cases against Letby. Retired neonatologist Dr Xu Li said he believed his findings on skin mottling were misinterpreted by the prosecution. He said in a new paper he published in December last year there were no cases of skin discoloration when air was injected into the veins. We'll continue to bring you more on this as we get it throughout the day. Elsewhere, China has retaliated after the US imposed 10% tariffs on its goods. That's as President Donald Trump made the announcement last night that the US will delay imposing tariffs on Mexico for a month after agreeing a border deal with the Mexican president. Not long after the US taxes on China began at 5 a.m. British time, China said it was imposing 10% tariffs on American crude oil, agricultural machinery, large displacement cars and pickup trucks. There will also be 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas, as well as an investigation into Google. China also said it's imposing export controls on rare earth metals, but that won't come into effect until the 10th of February. Global markets slumped earlier in the day yesterday following Trump's announcements and his stated intention to impose tariffs on the EU, but he hinted he may not hit the UK. Elsewhere, Angela Rayner looks set to team up with Conservative Dominic Grieve to form a new council on Islam and free speech. It's expected to have 16 members who will focus on what they say is a rise in Islamophobia. The Deputy Prime Minister is facing backlash on other fronts today after giving the green light to 6 councils to raise taxes by 10%. The government has announced a major trial aiming to transform breast cancer screening with artificial intelligence, with almost 700,000 women expected to take part. It's hoped the technology will help specialists catch cancer earlier, as well as freeing up radiologists in a bid to slash waiting times. According to Breast Cancer Now, about 55,000 women and 400 men are diagnosed with breast cancer every year in the UK. Secondary Care Minister Karen Smith told GBNews the National Institute for Health Research will start recruiting these women as soon as possible.
The difference it makes is having less clinicians involved in the work of the scanning and looking at those results, using AI to do that, freeing up more clinical time and making that happen faster. We screen 2 million women a year, so we should get to that number fairly quickly and then be able to analyse those results. So it's really exciting use of AI, because I think we talk about AI in sort of general terms, but being able to bring something of this size to this number of women, I think is a really exciting development on World Cancer Day.
And actor and comedian Brian Murphy has died at the age of 92. Murphy was best known for his role in the 1970s British sitcoms Man About the House and George and Mildred. He passed away at his home in Kent on Sunday morning. Murphy's friend and agent Thomas Bowington described him as a joyful and profoundly good-hearted man. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 9 minutes past midday. Now, a 15-year-old boy has died after being stabbed to death at a school in Sheffield.
Yes, the young man has been named as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Now, a teenager has since been arrested on suspicion of murder, and floral tributes continue to mount up outside the school in Sheffield.
Well, while the police investigation continues, we're joined by GB News Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley, who is at the site at that school. Anna, just a terrible day.
It really is, Tom. Sheffield is truly a city in mourning. All day, all morning and throughout this afternoon, parents, students and members of the community have been coming to the school here to lay floral tributes and pay their respects to 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose, who sadly died yesterday, and police are currently questioning a 15-year-old boy in connection with that. Now, as part of these floral tributes, it's clear just how loved Harvey was. He's described in the tributes as loving, kind, somebody who loved Sheffield United Football Club. And I'm just going to read some of the tributes to you. One says, Harvey, my pal, gone too soon but won't be forgotten, rest in peace. One of Harvey's teachers also came and laid a bunch of flowers with the note that said, I only taught you a few times in year 7, but I remember you well. Despite being occasionally a little too energetic, you were always polite and friendly. I'm so sorry that this has happened. Another tribute describes Harvey as a lovely lad and the life of a party, and it reads, fly high, you beautiful boy, forever 15. Just truly shocking and saddening. Any parent's worst nightmare, sending your child to school for them never to return. Now, police were called out to this incident at 17 minutes past 12 yesterday. They remain on site, and as well as people coming to pay tribute, there's also been campaigners here as well. We spoke to one earlier, Anthony Olasande. He's a founder of Always an Alternative, campaigning against knife crime in Sheffield, and this is what he told us.
I did a project with this school actually a couple of years ago called Why Me. It was a short film to raise awareness of knife crime, just to show that anybody could be affected by it, and it's just a shame that it's happened to this school. I think it's happened because it's been ignored by, you know, the government, the police, even schools as well. They try to brush it under the carpet, try to act like it's not a thing when it is. And I think because there's not been no big consequences or anything to show the devastation that actually happens, people feel that they get away with it.
This school was also put into lockdown last week on January the 29th. The head teacher told parents that the reason for the lockdown was due to threatening behaviour between a small number of students where threats were made of physical violence. Now, there's over 1,300 pupils that go to this school. It's still closed today as investigations continue. Police are asking people with information to come forward, and we'll be here throughout the afternoon with any developments as we get them.
Well, Anna, thanks so much for being there for us. We're going to be following this story, of course, throughout the day.
But the issue of knife crime and stabbings in school has become a national issue for our country.
Yes, in April, a 14-year-old girl who stabbed 2 teachers and a pupil at a school in Wales. That event took place just months ago.
In May, a 17-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after a stabbing at a school in Sheffield.
And now a 15-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder following this fatal stabbing of a teenage boy at a school in Sheffield.
So it appears more and more teenagers are involved in stabbing incidents, particularly at our schools, where they should, at least in theory, be safe. So we got thinking, and we want to know whether teenage murder suspects in general should be named when they're charged. Should they lose their right to anonymity? As it stands, they are considered children, and therefore there's no one can put their name out in the press or anywhere at all. So should they lose that right?
Well, joining us now is the former Met Police detective Mike Neville, who thinks they should be named, and the social campaigner and entrepreneur Winston Davis, who thinks they shouldn't. Mike, let's start with you. You want the law to be changed. Why?
I was a soldier at 16, so I was taught to use automatic weapons, and I was able to serve my country at 16. I think 16 is a good age. We're particularly told by the Labour Party that you could be able to vote at 16. So I think if you are at 16 years old, if you kill somebody or commit a heinous offence, I think you should be named. I think possibly with children who are somebody's under 16, then there may be some reasons that we can hold it back, but they should be named when they're convicted. But if you're 16 years old, I was old enough, as I say, to serve this country, you're old enough to understand that the wickedness that you've done, you should be named.
I mean, Winston, a lot of people would consider these types of crimes, stabbing or even stabbing someone to death, as a very adult crime. Surely the perpetrators should be treated, or the suspects should be treated as such.
Yeah, look, 100%, right? If someone has committed, like you said, a heinous crime, they've murdered, they've stabbed, they've done whatever they've done, okay, yeah, sure, 100%, treat them as the way they should be treated, as we've seen in recent weeks, right? 100%. However, if they've not been convicted and they are not, and we can't say legally that they have been proven to be guilty of that crime, then we're in this dangerous situation where where we see loads of times now trial by media. The name goes out, it's on social media, it's plastered all over the TV, and those people are guilty on the presumption that they have been arrested and charged, therefore they're guilty. That's the danger of it.
You do need quite a bit of evidence before you charge someone, though, Winston. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, of course you need evidence. That's why you go into trial. That's why you go and test it in a court of law. If not, as soon as someone's arrested, forget the court procedure. Let's go out, let's hang them up, let's shoot them, let's get rid of them. You know, whatever we're going to do, you know, because there's no judicial process there.
And Mike, why would you cut this off at age 16? What about a 15-year-old?
As I say, I think 16's a reasonable thing because you have to treat children differently, but the children mature much quicker now. As I say, in 1983, I was 16 and I was a soldier, and there's a continual campaign. People have voted at 16 in Scotland and Wales. So there's this blurred line. What is an adult? Let's make a decision and make it final. So let's say 16 is an adult. You can make all sorts of choices at 16 about who you have sex with or anything else. What do you know? So let's draw a line in the sand and say this is what it is. But at 16, you are old enough to face the consequences of what you've done. And the argument that Winston puts forward about trial by social media, that applies if you're 83 and you stab somebody in your name. So you either don't name anybody or there is a system where people are named. And in this country, justice is seen to be open, so people should be named. And I think if you are convicted and you're under 16, then you should be named. We shouldn't have anybody hiding away who's committed the most heinous of offences. Once you're found guilty, you should be named.
Winston, what about those who admit their guilt? So arrested, charged, plead guilty before, so a trial doesn't even have to take place. There are cases, many cases across the country, where someone who is considered a child by law, under the age of 18, will have been arrested, charged, admitted their own guilt, and still the media can't name them. Is that right?
Again, I know people are going to be screaming, oh, no, forget it. But until they've been convicted in law, and again, the conversation goes back to, are they an adult at 16 or are they an adult at 18? I have a 14 and 15-year-old sons. They are not adults. They are far from being adults. And what we just said a minute ago about children maturing quicker, they're not, trust me. People are buying houses later, they're getting married later, they're having children later. Trust me, they are not growing up quicker. The erosion in our society of morals, of understanding what it means to be a decent human being, that's the issue. It's not about their age.
Mike, what about the parents? I mean, if it is a child committing a very, one of the worst crimes, a violent crime, a stabbing, a murder, should something be done with the parents?
I think they should be looked into. What was that? You know, sometimes you get I come from a single mum. When boys get to a certain age, they're bigger than their mother. They can do really what they want to, you know, when you're that age. But I think if some parents have been feckless, if they can be found to have neglected and allowed this to happen, then some action should be taken. But that could be part of the investigation. Are the parents in some way responsible for how this individual has turned out? Some single, particularly mums, they'll have no ability to control that boy at all, but some will, and some will have neglected them and added fuel to the fire of how bad they are, and some action could be taken against them.
It's an incredibly thorny issue, isn't it? And sadly, we're going to be having more of these conversations as more of this stuff happens. In some way, children have never been more infantilised, and we're not buying houses, and you're right, not getting married and having children until far later. But in other ways, school playgrounds are now looking more like battlefields. But for now, both Mike Neville and Winston Davies, thanks so much for joining us and talking through what is, I'm sure, going to be a conversation that continues to be had.
OK, well, let us know your thoughts. Who do you agree with? gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Yes, US officials have striked an extraordinary migrant deal with El Salvador to accept deportees from any country, including dangerous criminals. Is this a triumph on the part of Donald Trump? Should the UK copy?
Nana are Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
5 years ago now, we developed this campaign called Regifting Beauty. And Regifting Beauty is about giving back to those that are in less fortunate situations than the majority of us. And I was coming across people that were receiving gifts at Christmas. You know how many gifts we receive? Gift sets, items, bath bombs, all of these things that we don't necessarily use. For myself, they sit in the bathroom cupboard all year round. So I was thinking of a way how we can make that better, you know, put that to better purpose. And we developed this campaign 5 years ago called Regifting Beauty. And it's where people can donate unwanted toiletries, sanitary items, skincare, perfumes, and we work with different charities around the country and they will re-gift them to survivors of domestic abuse. And for years now, it's only really been focused around women. There hasn't really been a male focus. So Ben and I were having conversations and we were thinking, well, and I was getting comments throughout the years of doing it, saying, why are men excluded from this? Surely it should be applicable to men too. I mean, in the UK, over 700,000 men are suffering with domestic abuse on an annual basis. And a lot of that goes unreported. And there's over 2 million people in the UK that do suffer from some form of domestic abuse, be it physical or psychological, and it's an important topic that we should be discussing. So this campaign is about providing something that may seem trivial, but it restores some level of dignity, and I think that's so important when survivors are just trying to regain aspects of their life. Something so small that maybe sitting in your bathroom cupboard that you're not using could go to such better use. So this year we're launching the Regifting Beauty, the Turnaround Edition, about turning around moments in life and allowing people to have those turnaround moments, which also plays on Ben's, you know, song, Turnaround.
Gotta turn
it fits in nicely with that.
Which I'll be on with you.
For the remix,
it's all fitting in nicely, isn't it?
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 24 minutes past midday, we're going to go straight to Downing Street. Our man on Downing Street, Chris Hope, is fresh out of speaking with the Prime Minister's official spokesman. And Chris, what does Downing Street have to say about this allegation that a voice coach met with Keir Starmer during the tightest level of restrictions in December 2020?
Tom, hi, welcome to Downing Street. Yeah, precisely nothing on that, and that's no surprise because the PM's official spokesman is a civil servant. He speaks to the Prime Minister since he became Prime Minister back in July. So what we're told is that it's not a matter for him, the spokesman, to get involved. We have the PM's words from last night. Of course, the PM last night told reporters, and I was there in Brussels for that press conference, to shouted questions from other journalists. He said all the rules were followed. Not for me to comment, a matter for political colleagues is what the line is from Downing Street, and that is understandable. That's what should happen. The civil servant who speaks to the PM shouldn't be speaking about things before he became PM, but there will be other people speaking for him today, and we'll get those lines to you as soon as we can. The big news from Lobby, though, is that Sir Keir Starmer is rolling out the red carpet for Ursula von der Leyen. She is the European Commission President, and the European Council chief, he's Antonio Costa, on May the 19th. That'll be the first of annual summits between the UK Prime Minister and the leader of the European Commission, the top people in the trading bloc. They want to work on further collaboration with the European Union. Other things happened last night. Of course, I was with the PM yesterday in Brussels, as you both know. The talks last night were about security and defence, we are told. The other issues which we know Europe want to raise with us, notably, on freedom of movement of the under 30s, that was not raised, we understand, on guidance. And the PM will be meeting with a Danish Prime Minister tonight here in Downing Street, but it is unlikely UK will be working to sort out a solution to the issue of Greenland with the US.
Really, really fascinating. Red carpet to be rolled out for Ursula von der Leyen. Well, Chopper, thanks for joining us, and we'll check in with you a little bit later. But of course, elsewhere, the US officials have struck an extraordinary migrant deal with El Salvador to accept deportees.
Yeah, so this has been described as the most unprecedented and extraordinary migratory agreement anywhere in the world. The deal will see El Salvador take migrants of all nationalities, as well as violent criminals now in American jails.
It all comes as President Trump secured border protection agreements from both Canada and Mexico. So joining us now is the Conservative Member of Parliament, Mark Francois, because, Mark, this is a pretty extraordinary deal, and many people will be asking, golly, couldn't we do the same?
Well, thank you for having me on. We had a migrant agreement. We had the Rwanda plan. Now, some people liked it and some people didn't. But it's one more plan that Labour have got. They have absolutely no plan at all. They have a slogan, we will smash the gangs. Well, the gangs, I'm afraid, remain resolutely unsmashed. And small boat arrivals are up by a third since Labour came to power. And it's worse. They've got this new borders bill they want to bring into Parliament. That will change the law so that people coming across the Channel who, as they arrived illegally, weren't allowed to qualify for asylum, that would change the law to allow them to apply. What that means is more will come. It will be a pull factor. So not only have they got no plan, they do have legislation which is likely to mean even more people will attempt a perilous journey across what is already the most crowded shipping lane in the world. And in the Channel, unfortunately, a number of people have already died. So you look at what Trump is doing in the United States, and you compare that to the Labour approach. The only solution they have is to make it easier for people to come across the Channel and apply for asylum.
Mark,
it's absolutely bonkers.
Keir Starmer has been pictured with Giorgia Meloni. They're apparently working together on some kind of mafia-style crackdown on the people smugglers and migrant routes. Does that not show that, at least he's trying to do something on this issue, Mark?
Oh, come on. So what, he's going to stop people illegally coming across the Channel with a photo opportunity? I mean, come on.
Oh, with the mafia-style crackdown, Mark?
Really? Does anyone believe that? I mean, this is a bloke who promised faithfully before the election he wasn't going to raise anyone's taxes. And then him and Rachel put them up by £40 billion. The man's word is shot to pieces. And look, all these talks about an EU reset, let's be clear about what this means. That's code. He wants to rejoin the European Union. I sat in the Commons for 2 years watching Mr. Second Referendum himself pull every procedural trick in Erskine May to try and keep us in the European Union at absolutely almost any price. He wants to rejoin the EU. Starmer remains a Remainer, and he will try and get away with it if British public opinion lets him. And we shouldn't. All this talk about resets and better relationships, it's all code, it's all smoke and mirrors for wanting to take Britain back into the European Union without a referendum. That is what all these photo opportunities are about. That is what is going on. And the sooner people wake up to that, the better.
Wow, well, we'll keep our beady little eyes on that one. Mark Francois, for the time being, thanks very much for joining us. Conservative Member of Parliament, of course.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, I mean, Donald Trump is doing what he said he was going to do, to be fair. He said he was going to launch a massive, unprecedented crackdown on illegal migration. He's doing that. He's throwing his weight around when it comes to tariffs. It does look as though Mexico and Canada have both ceded ground, particularly on the border issues that Trump is concerned about. So, you know, it might be unusual, but is he getting things done?
El Salvador used to have the highest homicide rate in all of the Americas. Now it's got one of the lowest. I think only Canada is safer than El Salvador. What did they do? They locked up all their criminals. They built the biggest prison in the world, they rounded up the gangs, and they imprisoned them. No wonder they've got space and are advertising this now to the United States. One thing, though, when all of the British prisons were completely full to busting over the summer and we had to let people out early and all the rest of it, a third of their sentence served, Estonia offered their prison space to the UK. And the British government didn't take Estonia up on the offer. Why? Because under the terms of the ECHR,
for goodness sake,
visitation rights must be upheld for criminals. So we couldn't take up space in other countries because we would then have to, as taxpayers, pay for their friends and family to fly out and visit.
Makes me want to tear my hair out. I mean, how many of these stories do we have where you read a little bit and then you find out, the ECHR. That's the reason why that foreign criminal can't be deported. Oh, that's the reason why this man who's committed several crimes and continues to sexually assault women in the town centre of wherever, oh, he can stay too, because of his family life rights.
Because, or this paedophile...
We're absolute mugs.
This paedophile can remain in the country because he needs access to his children.
Yeah, that was a wild one.
Oh.
I mean, you know, do you feel safer because of the ECHR? Isn't that fundamentally one of the reasons why we have these things? You know, for the security of our nation?
Everyone talks about Article 10 of the ECHR. The ECHR protects your right to freedom of speech. And then a man burns a Quran in Manchester and is arrested. Where was his free speech right there? Where is the ECHR protecting him for doing what he wants with his own property?
Yeah, and his name's just put out there by the police. I mean, what's all that about? He's certainly going to have a target over his head now, surely. Anyway, lots more coming up on today's show. Did you know that there is a theft every 12 minutes from a van in the UK? It's completely out of control. We're going to be joined by one white van man who's had enough of it. That's after your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. The top stories this hour. Police are continuing to question a teenager after a 15-year-old boy died in a fatal stabbing at a school in Sheffield. The victim was named as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Tributes poured in at the scene and on social media with flowers, candles and balloons laid on a wall outside the school. Sophie Wilgoose, Harvey's sister, has said, "My heart is broken into a million pieces." Stop and search data reveals children as young as 10 have been found carrying bladed weapons. Last year alone, just over 100 cases of youths between 10 and 17 years old were found with weapons. The case of convicted child serial killer Lucy Letby is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice. The Criminal Cases Review Commission received an application from her lawyers yesterday. Police notes have revealed she was absent for more than a third of suspicious incidents at the Countess of Chester Hospital. A panel of experts are giving evidence today. Opening the press conference, MP Sir David Davis described Letby's convictions as one of the major injustices of modern times. Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others. And China has retaliated after the US imposed 10% tariffs on its goods. That's as President Donald Trump made the announcement last night that the US will delay imposing tariffs on Mexico for a month after agreeing a border deal with the Mexican president. Not long after the US taxes on China began, at 5 a.m. British time, China said it was imposing 10% tariffs on American crude oil and agricultural machinery. There will also be 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas. China also said it's imposing export controls on rare earth metals, but that won't come into effect until the 10th of February. Global markets slumped earlier in the day yesterday following Trump's announcements and his stated intention to impose tariffs on the EU, but hinted he may not hit the UK. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more news in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Wet weather edging across the country today, brightening up in many western areas this afternoon with some blustery showers in the far northwest. The rain is being created by this wiggling weather front, which is, as I say, only slowly staggering across the country, provided some pretty heavy bursts of rain across southwest Scotland earlier, clearing from here now, but that rain only slowly spreading its way towards the Midlands, across northwest England. Much of East Anglia and the southeast will stay dry until dusk. Brighter skies following to much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but some showers coming into the far northwest. Pretty mild out there, particularly ahead of this weather front, but it's also really gusty. As this band of rain moves in, the wind's suddenly really picking up. That rain, though, is kind of fizzling out, so it's going to be fairly light and patchy as it crosses East Anglia in the southeast, but nevertheless, things turning a bit damp here during the evening rush hour. Drier conditions following for Wales and northern England, but lots of showers packing into Northern Ireland and western Scotland. There'll be some snow over the tops of the hills here. The wind's easing as that rain band moves through, but staying pretty breezy across northwestern areas well into the night. Elsewhere, the rain will steadily clear from the southeast, so yes, a little damp here, but then turning clearer by midnight, and then much of England and Wales actually having a dry night and a night with long, clear spells as well. A few showers will keep going into western Scotland and particularly the north of Northern Ireland. Staying breezy here, helping to keep the temperatures up. Most towns and cities dropping to about 3 or 4, but there will be some touches of frost in the countryside. So a chilly start, slightly colder tomorrow morning than this morning, but a sparkling day of sunshine for quite a few of us. Maybe the odd shower brushing through Wales, northwest England. Certainly there'll be more showers in western Scotland, but many areas fine and dry tomorrow with plenty of sunny spells. A little cooler with temperatures about average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Train services are suspended between Ayr and Irvine because of electrical supply problems. In East Yorkshire, the A614 is partly blocked by an accident on Market Wheaton Road at home on Spalding Moor, causing delays. There are a number of problems in West Yorkshire. The A650 is blocked eastbound by an accident on Westgate Hill Street at East Byerley. The A646 is partly blocked by an accident on Burnley Road at Sowerby Bridge. The A642 is closed each way between Flockton and Grange Moor after an accident. And the A672 is closed off junction 22 of the M62 at Rishworth Moor after an accident in the early hours of this morning. On the M4 in Berkshire, there are eastbound queues after traffic was stopped when a car broke down between junctions 8, 9 and 7 from Maidenhead to Slough. And in London, the A4 is blocked eastbound towards junction 2 of the M4 at Brentford after an accident with queues from Syon Lane.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 20 to 1. Now, you've been getting in touch about a lot of the stories we've been talking about today, particularly the stabbing crisis in our schools.
Yeah, a lot of you are deeply concerned. Jenny in Lancashire says schools are already practising a lockdown incident. My daughter had one last week. The violence and murder is awful, not defendable. However, we need to tackle the cause. What is pushing youngsters to take these actions? Is it radical views? Are they victims of bullying, trying to get retribution, gang war, drugs, mental health issues? It might be all of those things, depending on the young person.
But it is fascinating to know that in schools...
Yeah.
I mean, we were almost saying, oh, goodness me, I hope it doesn't come to the point where there are drills like there are in the United States for school shootings. But it seems like there are already...
We're out of touch, Tom.
Children practising for stabbing incidents.
Yeah, so when I was at school, you know, you had the fire alarm test, the drill for that. I think that was it.
That was true for me too.
No, I think that was it. There wasn't anything about stabbing, that's for sure. And Danny in the Isle of Wight, she says, for decades now I've seen school bullies being kept in school and the bullied moved or told to homeschool their children. Yes, we were talking also about how, you know, we're quite loath to actually expel pupils sometimes.
I've got a theory, actually, that this is why...
She says they get special treatment, the badly behaved kids.
I think this is why grammar schools are so popular. I don't think it's the fact that necessarily there are brighter children just because they've passed their 11+. I think that simply the benefit of grammar schools might well be removing maybe the 10% most disruptive children. And if non-grammar schools were more easily able to remove, you know, the 1 or 2 kids in class who are the really disruptive ones, the quality of the others' education would rise just completely through the roof. The amount of time the teacher could spend on, you know, the 98% as opposed to the 2%.
Now, this is a controversial one. Richard says we need more male teachers. I wonder if there's some truth to that, actually. You know, what do all these boys and teenagers have in common with their female teachers?
It is a hugely female-dominated profession, isn't it?
Hugely female-dominated. And is that the best for young boys? You know, do we neglect some of their needs with that? But then more males need to go into teaching then, I guess.
Yeah.
So there you go. Keep the views coming in. Very interesting to read your experiences, particularly that lockdown incident at school. Well, are you a victim of van theft? Do you know a victim of van theft? Well, tool theft from vans went up by 5% from 2022 to 2023. Over 44,000 incidents reported to the police in just 1 year, the equivalent to 1 theft every 12 minutes.
Well, yesterday, tradesmen gathered in Westminster demanding tougher sentencings for criminals as research found that tens of millions of pounds worth of tools are stolen every year.
Well, joining us now is the Chief Executive of Band of Builders, Gavin Crane. Gavin, thank you very much indeed for coming on to talk about this. I mean, those figures are absolutely astonishing. Can you try and put it into, you know, real life for us? I mean, have you been badly affected by this?
Good afternoon. Absolutely. Even our charity van has been targeted twice in the last 12 months. And whilst we don't carry tools like the tradespeople, we've suffered, obviously, the damage to the vehicle, the rise in insurance premiums and the loss of the vehicle while it's been repaired. But tools are tradespeople's livelihood, and losing them can mean to thousands of pounds in replacement costs. Many self-employed workers don't have insurance, and even those that do may struggle with claims because of the terms and conditions and clauses within the policies make it very difficult. And let's face it, without tools, work grinds to a halt, leading to cancelled jobs, lost clients, and obviously financial instability. So it's a very tough time to be a tradesperson.
And this has been getting worse in recent years, not better. I mean, why is it getting so much worse now?
I think certainly vans, obviously, tradespeople's vans are obviously known to carry quite a substantial amount in value of tools. And I think the thieves just see them as easy targets. Which is why we're calling for action now for tougher sentences on vehicle thieves and calling for the kind of opportunities to resell these items to be closed, such as car boots and marketplaces.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? They go straight to the car boot sales or on the online marketplaces, Facebook and all of that. I mean, do you get the impression that the police care about this issue, that they're doing enough? So if your van gets, you know, attacked and they take out the tools or whatever's in there, you're left with a huge expense. Are the police on the case?
I mean, I joined the rally yesterday and the police around Parliament Square were absolutely fantastic. We don't blame the police at all, I don't think. I think they're short-funded, they have very limited resources. But just talking from experience, for example, our case, which where our van was broken into 2 months ago, again, that's now been closed. There's no further evidence or information. And again, someone gets away with damaging property.
I mean, some of the stories that I've been reading are just desperate. I mean, tens of thousands of pounds worth of kit stolen in some of these cases. People who just can't afford to get back into the business after a particularly heinous theft. Can you tell us some of the personal stories that we were hearing about yesterday?
I think it goes so much wider than that. I think we also need to consider the mental health and well-being implication of tool theft, the stress of financial loss, obviously the frustration, anxiety and depression. And obviously repeated thefts can make tradespeople feel that they're targeted and unsafe at work. And this is an industry-wide impact for the whole construction industry, with many tradespeople considering leaving the industry due to the repeated thefts and which will ultimately worsen the skill shortage.
Yeah, I mean, you go out to a job, a plumbing, electrician, whatever you're doing, construction worker, you step into someone's home or whatever, and then you come back out and your van's just been emptied. I mean, I can imagine the anxiety and I can see how people can get into a depressed state, you know? Gavin... Sorry,
there's not many occupations where you lay awake at night worrying about whether your tools that you need to do your job will be there in the morning.
Yeah, it's one of those things about being a sort of, well, a sole trader or someone just responsible for your own business. I can imagine that. Gavin Crane, thanks so much for joining us, Chief Exec of Band of Builders, and actually perhaps the best surname of any builder that's nominative determinism, isn't it? Gavin Crane.
It's very good, very good. It's a pretty evil crime, actually, I think. To destroy someone's livelihood like that with no care for the consequences.
Yeah.
Horrible. Toughest sentences, I say. Anyway, Labour say they plan to bring back neighbourhood policing with 13,000 neighbourhood officers to crack down on crime and keep our streets safe. OK, fine.
Well, we're going to get to that in just a second, but if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of those top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there. If you're looking for some winter sun, actually the Mediterranean's the place to find it. Plenty of sunny skies during the next few days, although Greece has seen some heavy rain, and that's clearing on Wednesday, followed by windy conditions through Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. Italy, through the Balearics, into Spain, Portugal and the Canaries, indeed plenty of sunny skies, and it remains that way until the end of the week when it does turn increasingly unsettled.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
OK, lots more coming up. Yes, Angela Rayner. Well, she's going to be ruling on Islam, apparently. She's set to create a council to tackle Islamophobia. But critics are very much worried that this could impact free speech. That's next.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Newly released MI5 files reveal that Queen Elizabeth II was kept in the dark over the treachery of a senior courtier.
Yeah, for almost a decade. This is Sir Anthony Blunt, who played a double life, passing intelligence, the KGB, during World War II as a senior MI5 officer. But, remarkably, he was allowed to keep his position amid fears of a major scandal if the truth came out.
Well, now those files have been released by the National Archives, which includes the Queen's response to finding out a trusted member like Anthony Blunt was really a traitor.
Well, joining us now in the studio is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Good to see you this morning, Cameron. This is astonishing.
Oh, absolutely. And this wasn't a little spy. This was Anthony Blunt was a full-blown spy. He passed to the Soviets the D-Day deception plans during the Second World War. He was working for MI5, but a double agent for the KGB as well.
The wrong plans.
He passed on the plans.
The wrong ones.
The wrong one in 1944. Yeah. Exactly. But he then got a job inside Buckingham Palace as one of the Queen's most trusted aides and courtiers, the surveyor of her art, essentially like kind of an art advisor for her late Majesty. There was always suspicions about Anthony Blunt way back in the early 50s because he was part of this notorious Cambridge spy ring, a group of 5 boys recruited at Cambridge. 2 of these people fled to Moscow in 1951. Anthony stayed behind in London and subsequently got a job inside Buckingham Palace, and it wasn't until 1964 that he confessed to his treachery. The reason he confessed was because he was granted immunity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying, and maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. 12:50 it is. Angela Rayner looks set to team up with Conservative heavyweight Dominic Grieve to form a new council on Islam.
Well, it's expected to have 16 members who'll focus on what they say is a rise in Islamophobia. But the Deputy Prime Minister is facing backlash on other fronts today after giving the green light to councils raising tax. But let's focus in on this council, because it has been in the context of an Islamophobia definition, a definition that the Labour Party have adopted that many people suspect might be hoisted upon the country. And might that limit what we are allowed to say about the religion of Islam?
Well, Emma Trimble has a strong opinion on this. Emma, thank you very much indeed for joining us. What do you make of it? I mean, you've written about an Islamophobia definition, potential curtailment of free speech. What are your thoughts on this?
I certainly do have a strong opinion. I don't think that it is possible to overstate how bad this is. You mentioned the Islamophobia definition. Well, way back in 2018, when this original all-party parliamentary group was published its report, there was a whole group of us, a whole host of us from across the spectrum. We had secularists, Christians, Sikhs, all sorts of organisations who pushed back against this out of the concern that this is effectively a blasphemy law. It would stop you from being able to silence. It would stop you from being able to criticise Islam. And so I think when we're talking about this also in the context of this man who's been arrested in Manchester for burning a Quran and has pled guilty to a racially aggravated public order offence for that. This is, and there's no other way to put it, it is a blasphemy law that would be imposed on the whole of the British public. And we have to remember here that they've appointed, as you mentioned, Dominic Greaves to be the chair of this new council to come up with a definition of Islamophobia. Well, he's the person who wrote the foreword for the report, the initial report that put forward this definition of Islamophobia that would have extremely negative implications for freedom of speech. So the damage that this would do to British society cannot possibly be overstated.
I've read this report on the definition of Islamophobia. They say if you talk about Islam being spread by the sword, that's Islamophobic. I'm sorry, that's literally history.
History.
That's literally. I mean, the whole point about the original caliphate is that it was expansionist and full of conquest.
And expressions of Muslimness. I mean, it's so vague, Emma. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an endlessly elasticated definition. It could be used, and actually at the time, it was pointed out by former counter-terrorism chief that this would hamper our ability to deal with terrorism. It would effectively make it so that if you are an ex-Muslim who criticises the hijab, who criticises the Prophet Muhammad, if I were to say that I think that the Prophet Muhammad was a liar, which of course I do because I'm not a Muslim, so I don't believe that Islam is true, that would be considered Islamophobic. And so actually the irony is that when the Labour government want to make itself seem as if it's so welcoming to people who want to claim asylum here. But if you come here from a Muslim country where you're not safe because you're perhaps an apostate and you might be killed in, say, Pakistan for your views on Islam, you come here and then find out that you're going to get arrested.
I mean, Emma, we'll have to speak again on this because we've run to the end of the hour, unfortunately, but we'll speak again. Emma Trimble there. Thank you very much indeed. We'll be back in just a tick, so stick with us.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office. Here on GB News, wet weather edging across the country today, brightening up in many western areas this afternoon with some blustery showers in the far northwest. The rain is being created by this wiggling weather front, which is, as I say, only slowly staggering across the country, provided some pretty heavy bursts of rain across southwest Scotland earlier, clearing from here now, but that rain only slowly spreading its way towards the Midlands, across northwest England. Much of East Anglia and the southeast will stay dry until dusk. Brighter skies following to much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but some showers coming into the far northwest. Pretty mild out there, particularly ahead of this weather front, but it's also really gusty. As this band of rain moves in, the wind's suddenly really picking up. That rain, though, is kind of fizzling out, so it's going to be fairly light and patchy as it crosses East Anglia in the southeast, but nevertheless, things turning a bit damp here during the evening rush hour. Drier conditions following for Wales and northern England, but lots of showers packing into Northern Ireland and western Scotland. There'll be some snow over the tops of the hills here. The wind's easing as that rain band moves through, but staying pretty breezy across northwestern areas well into the night. Elsewhere, the rain will steadily clear from the southeast, so yes, a little damp here, but then turning clearer by midnight, and then much of England and Wales actually having a dry night and a night with long, clear spells as well. A few showers will keep going into western Scotland and particularly the north of Northern Ireland. Staying breezy here, helping to keep the temperatures up. Most towns and cities dropping to about 3 or 4, but there will be some touches of frost in the countryside. So a chilly start, slightly colder tomorrow morning than this morning, but a sparkling day of sunshine for quite a few of us. Maybe the odd shower brushing through Wales, northwest England. Certainly there'll be more showers in western Scotland, but many areas fine and dry tomorrow with plenty of sunny spells. A little cooler with temperatures about average for the time of year.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Aaron McLean, the goal machine here, used to play for Peterborough United. You bagged loads of goals for them back in the day. But I've got a bone to pick with you, young man. You scored at the City ground against Nottingham Forest for, was it Hull City?
For Hull City, yeah.
Why did you do that?
Well, that was my job, unfortunately. I must say, that was actually one of my favourite goals.
Was it really?
Because I remember, obviously, playing at the City ground, unbelievable stadium, historic.
It is great.
So, and we beat you 1-0.
OK, no need to rub it in. These sports clubs, whether it's football or rugby or whatever, should offer 2 alternatives, either a professional footballer, or if you don't quite make it, you can still go and play football at a lower level, but have a career as well, maybe be an electrician or a plumber.
100%. You know, listen, I've had multiple conversations with various different people, whether it's the PFA or whether it's clubs. Even players who do have careers, you know, there's so many that don't make it and don't quite make it to the level or only play at a lower level. There's so many that do have long careers, but once you come to the end of that, you've spent, you know, for me, I spent 20 years as a professional footballer. Once I finished playing, what do you then do for the rest of your life? You know, at 35, once you retire, you still have to have a purpose in life. Yeah. But I'd almost be starting from ground zero. I'm fortunate that I went into coaching and then went into the media.
Yeah, that's good.
But for every one of me, there's hundreds that don't. And I've got so many friends who, I've got to say, you know, have really, really struggled on the, you know, mental health side.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because you go from, like, playing in stadiums, big stadiums, small stadiums, crowds, singing your name, and all that sort of stuff, that adulation, the buzz of winning games, and, you know, the downs of losing games, and you go from that to sort of nothing when you finish. I mean, that's a big come down area.
It's a huge come down.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 4th of February. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, the school stabbing horror. Tributes are pouring in for 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose, who was stabbed to death at All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield.
The Sheffield community are in mourning with the loss of 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose as police investigations continue into his stabbing.
We're keeping a close eye on that. Elsewhere, US officials strike an extraordinary migrant deal with El Salvador. The country will accept deportees from any country, including dangerous criminals. Should the United Kingdom look to do the same?
And Angela Rayner rules on Islam. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, she's set to create a council to tackle Islamophobia. But could a new Islamophobia definition stifle free speech?
And a panel of international medical experts today claim there's no evidence that Lucy Letby murdered a single baby. They say the deaths can be explained by natural causes and substandard care. We'll have the very latest. Well, a huge amount to cover on today's programme, not least the spate of stabbings that we're seeing in our schools. We'll get to all of it after your very latest news headlines.
Tom, thank you very much. And we start with some breaking news this hour that police in the city of Örebro in Sweden have confirmed 5 people have been shot in a school shooting in the city. The school is reportedly on lockdown and a major security operation is continuing there. A police statement says there has been a shooting at the school. 5 people have been shot. The extent of the injuries is unclear at this stage. They also say the charges are currently attempted murder, arson and aggravated weapons offence. More on this breaking story as we get it. Elsewhere, police are continuing to question a teenager after a 15-year-old boy died in a fatal stabbing at a school in Sheffield. The victim was named as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Tributes poured in at the scene and on social media with flowers, candles and balloons laid on a wall outside the school. The former Children's Commissioner for England has suggested knife crime involving teenagers is a national crisis that needs a national response. But Baroness Anne Longfield also says, I wouldn't like to see teachers in stab vests or body cams or metal scanners. Stop and search data reveals children as young as 10 have been found carrying bladed weapons. Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Richard Fuller, spoke to GB News.
I lived in America for some time, and they had even worse instances of school shootings. And it's such a tragedy. It traumatizes local communities because parents then have to send their kids to school the very next day or the week after. And it's always going to be in the back of your mind, can it happen another time at school or another local school? I just worry that we always think national government's got the answer, that somehow if we put some people in Whitehall to think about it, the answer will come. Actually, maybe we should just make sure that head teachers have that power. They know what's going on in their local school. They know where there may be a risk. Maybe we should give more power to people who are, on the front line, closer than expecting national policies to be the answer.
In other news, the case of convicted child serial killer Lucy Letby is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice. The Criminal Cases Review Commission received an application from her lawyers yesterday. Police notes have revealed she was absent for more than a third of suspicious incidents at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others. Today, a panel of international medical experts has given alternative causes of death in several cases against Lucy Letby. Retired neonatologist Dr Shu Lee said he believed his findings on skin mottling were misinterpreted by the prosecution. He said in a new paper he published in December last year there were no cases of skin discoloration when air was injected into the veins. More updates throughout the day. China has retaliated after the US imposed 10% tariffs on some of its goods. That's as President Donald Trump made the announcement last night that the US will delay imposing tariffs on Mexico for a month after agreeing a border deal with the Mexican president. Not long after the US taxes on China began this morning, China said it was imposing 10% tariffs on American crude oil and agricultural machinery. There will also be a 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas. China also said it's imposing export controls on rare earth metals, but that won't come into effect until the 10th of February. Global markets slumped earlier in the day yesterday following Trump's announcements and his stated intention to impose tariffs on the EU, but hinted he may not hit the UK. In other news, Angela Rayner looks set to team up with Conservative Dominic Grieve to form a new council on Islam and free speech. It's expected to have 16 members who will focus on what they say is a rise in Islamophobia. The Deputy Prime Minister is facing backlash on other fronts today after giving the green light to 6 councils to raise taxes by 10%. And the government has announced a major trial aiming to transform breast cancer screening with artificial intelligence, with almost 700,000 women expected to take part. It's hoped the technology will help specialists catch cancer earlier, as well as freeing up radiologists in a bid to slash waiting times. According to Breast Cancer Now, about 55,000 women and 400 men are diagnosed with breast cancer every year in the UK. Secondary Care Minister Karen Smith told GB News the National Institute for Health Research will start recruiting as soon as possible.
The difference it makes is having less clinicians involved in the work of the scanning and looking at those results, using AI to do that, freeing up more clinical time and making that happen faster. We screen 2 million women a year, so we should get to that number fairly quickly and then be able to analyse those results. So it's really exciting use of AI, because I think we talk about AI in sort of general terms, but being able to bring something of this size to this number of women, I think is a really exciting development on World Cancer Day.
And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more news in half an hour.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It is now 1:07 and we have breaking news coming into us from Sweden. Police in the city of Örebro have confirmed 5 people have been shot in a school shooting in the city.
Yes, the school is reportedly now on lockdown and a major security operation is continuing. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us now with the very latest. Mark, this is clearly a developing situation.
Yes, indeed. This school, the school concerned, we're told, is Risbergska School, which is in the city of Örebro. That's 125 miles west of Stockholm, the 6th largest city in Sweden. Although we say largest, it's still quite small. It's only 126,000 people. But a major operation currently still ongoing, we're told, at that school and a number of other neighbouring schools that are all on lockdown. Now, according to the Swedish police, they're saying that 5 people have been confirmed to have been shot. They're saying that this is currently seen as attempted murder, arson and aggravated weapons offence. There are reports from the media, local news outlets in the area, of the sound of shots being fired, classrooms in lockdown, people not really knowing what has happened, emergency rooms at the hospitals, accident and emergency rooms have been cleared out to deal with an expected influx of casualties. But the total number so far, anyway, confirmed by the police, is 5 people shot. But what it doesn't say is actually just how severely injured these individuals are and whether, indeed, of course, they are adults or children.
Yes, so more information will come in due course. I mean, Sweden's been grappling with a number of crises. Gang crime considered out of control. Also, the number of bombings as well, quite extraordinary.
Yeah, there has been very significant increases in violence across Sweden in recent years. Many people have linked that to the influx of migrants, in particular refugees. Now, we know that this school, according to the information that you found out, Tom, has got quite a high immigrant population at that school, but there is nothing that we have at the moment that suggests in any way that this involves an immigrant or anyone even connected with the school. It's far too early to say. All we know from the police, the authorities at the scene, is that this is still an active and ongoing situation with threat to life, with threats of violence, with 5 people confirmed to have been shot, and as a result, the school is on lockdown. No information even as to whether the shooter or shooters have been found at this stage.
Well, Mark, we'll let you get back to the newsroom, finding out more information for us, of course, all the time. We'll speak to you in just a few minutes' time. Thanks for joining us with that very breaking news.
Well, shocking to hear on a day when we've been discussing stabbings and fatal stabbings in schools in this country, and then to hear 5 people potentially shot in a school shooting in Sweden.
Well, we're sticking with this theme because, of course, the news out of yesterday, that 15-year-old boy died after being stabbed to death at a school in Sheffield.
The young man has been named as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. And now a teenager has since been arrested on suspicion of his murder, and floral tributes continue to mount up outside the school in Sheffield. We're joined now by GBNews Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley, who's on the scene for us. Anna, it would have come as a huge shock to the community.
Yes, Emily, a huge shock and devastation for the community. Sheffield is truly in mourning, and as you say, these floral tributes just continue to build throughout the day, showing how loved Harvey was by his friends, by his teachers and by people in the community. If I just step aside here, you can see these tributes just building. One tribute describes Harvey as a lovely lad, the life of the party, who had brought joy and laughter to everyone that knew him, and that his bubbly personality was contagious. The tribute ends, "Fly high, you beautiful boy, forever 15. Another from a friend says, "Harvey, my pal, gone too soon, but won't be forgotten. Rest in peace." And the tributes just continue in that vein. We've spoke to other students today who have told us how much that Harvey lit up the room. He was a fan of Sheffield United, and we can just see from these tributes how much he was cared for. Many cards here for the family as well. To all the family, our deepest sympathies, thinking of you. We've got balloons that have been put up, teddy bears, all here outside All Saints Catholic High School. We can see as well that police are still guarding the scene. This incident happened at, police were called here at 17 minutes past 12 yesterday afternoon. A 15-year-old boy still in custody, being questioned by the police in relation to that. Police still appealing for people with information to come forward, but certainly Sheffield, a community grieving, coming out here to pay their respects to 15-year-old Harvey, gone too soon.
Well, Anna, thanks so much for being there for us. Of course, we'll be back with you throughout the programme as we learn more about this tragic incident.
Now, back to politics. The Prime Minister has said that the UK is not going to choose between the United States and the European Union. Of course, this comes as President Trump is threatening the European Union with trade tariffs, but suggested that a deal could be worked out with us.
Well, when asked if Starmer would be willing to compromise on efforts to strengthen ties with the EU to maintain a favourable relationship, the Prime Minister said that both relationships are important.
Oh, great. Joining us now from Downing Street is GBNews political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, it's very interesting what Keir Starmer has to say, that we're not going to choose between the European Union and the United States, but he's, as you reported earlier, rolling out the red carpet for Ursula von der Leyen. He was at the EU Council meeting, bizarrely, even though he's not a European Union leader. I mean, he seems to be voting with his feet, does he not?
Yes, Emily, that's right. I mean, I think he may say there's no choice to be made, a false choice, but it depends what Donald Trump says. Donald Trump might expect him to make a choice to go towards the USA and try and do that trade deal, and we may be well outside of any tariff regime, which many would say is a benefit of leaving the European Union. That's right. The number 10 has announced this lunchtime that they will be rolling out in my words, rolling out the red carpet, not their words, but there'll be a visit here, an annual summit in the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, along with the European Council President Antonio Costa on May the 19th. There'll be a moment for UK and EU to discuss further collaboration. There were talks last night in Brussels. I was there for those. It was an informal meeting to discuss security, and we understand that freedom of movement didn't come up for 18 to 30-year-olds. And tonight, behind me, with the PM, we're meeting with the Danish Prime Minister. We are told that the UK is not offering to mediate over the issue of Greenland, and the US, under Donald Trump, is saying it might invade it or try and buy Greenland because of security reasons in the high north of the globe. The UK is not offering a role, but some might say, interesting that the Danish PM should come here because, of course, we have a special relationship, and it may be that we're looking. The Danes may ask us again. We'll try and find out later to mediate in that dispute between NATO allies. Denmark being a founding member of NATO, don't forget, along with the US. So I think it's all in play here. There's always been a choice, I think, for a UK Prime Minister to make for decades now. Sir Keir Starmer is trying to go right down the line and not make those choices, but no question, as we go forward into renegotiating our relationship with the European Union, that choice, the need to make a choice, might become more acute.
Yeah, and interestingly, this Denmark discussion, well, if the Americans wanted to grab Greenland from Denmark, there's a treaty dating back to the 1910s or 1920s that says the UK gets first dibs on Greenland if the Danish were ever to give it up, because, well, we carried a bit more weight back when we had a navy. Well, Christopher,
yeah, so that'll be then. I'm not sure whether that law is going to be in play. And you asked me in the last hour, by the way, about the issue of these alleged lockdown breaches. I have gone to people in Downing Street for you, Tom and Emily. They say the rules were followed, that this individual, Leonie Mellinger, who denies wrongdoing, was allowed to go to Labour headquarters on Christmas Eve 2020. Think back then, all on Brexit. Sir Keir Starmer was giving a statement on Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. That was she travelled from Brighton, which is a different tier, to London, tier 3 to tier 4. But according to Number 10, which is preparing Sir Keir for a speech he gave that day. It was a televised press conference. She was helping with speech preparation. And the rules then, according to Downing Street, allow this individual to go to work and support Sir Keir Starmer. So that is Number 10's defence. And of course, we heard yesterday from Sir Keir Starmer, he had shouts at him by reporters at the press conference as he left. He said, of course not, he didn't break any rules, and all rules were followed. That one will rumble on, but as things stand, Number 10 is holding firm on it.
OK, Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed. Our political editor outside Downing Street. Guido were reporting that she wasn't on the Labour books at that time. She wasn't being employed by the Labour Party.
Yeah, on her LinkedIn it says that she started being employed by the Labour Party the next month. But I suppose, it was late December, might she have just reported
Christmas
that wrong?
However important you think you are as leader of the opposition, do you really get a voice coach in on Christmas Eve when you've got a family?
Interestingly,
Bit bizarre, isn't it?
The reporter at The Express, Christian Calgi, found that this voice coach made a post on her LinkedIn in 2021 saying it's great to be back teaching in person, implying she hadn't been teaching in person for the previous year or two. And if that was the case, if she thought that she wasn't, a key worker and was teaching via Zoom for everyone, why did she travel 50 miles to be in central London, tier 4 lockdown, to meet Keir Starmer?
Yeah, and it matters. It smacks of hypocrisy. And as you point out, a lot of people were in dire straits at that time, unable to see their dying relatives or, witness the birth of their child.
Yeah, we're going to stick with this one. We're going to follow it up, hopefully. The Leader of the Opposition will have something to say about it at Prime Minister's Questions tomorrow. But let's stick with the US now, because American officials have struck an extraordinary migrant deal with the El Salvadorian president to accept deportees.
Yes, it's been described as the most unprecedented and extraordinary migratory agreement anywhere in the world. The deal will see El Salvador take migrants of all nationalities, as well as violent criminals, now in American jails. OK, well, joining us is former Immigration Minister Kevin Foster. Kevin, Donald Trump's certainly hitting the ground running. What do you make of it?
Well, it's good to see that, one, El Salvador is accepting responsibility for its citizens that have abused the hospitality of the United States by committing criminal offences. And two, for the US administration, they're really driving at dealing with the issue that really strikes the core of many of the problems with dealing with illegal migration, is Where do you send someone if you can't send them back to their home country? So I suspect the United States here will be thinking particularly of Venezuelans, where I think it's pretty obvious why the Trump administration will get no cooperation out of the regime there in terms of immigration returns. So no, it's quite extraordinary. It's a bold move. And do you know what? There's a part of me that says, I think many people watching will think, well, if El Salvador is prepared to accept convicted criminals of any nationality, it makes sense perhaps for us to look at sending a few people resting in our jails who have citizenship in the Americas or in the Caribbean. They're pending they're finishing their sentence and heading home.
Of course, the difference, Kevin, is that America isn't under the auspices of the European Court of Human Rights, or indeed that convention. I mean, in some ways, this is analogous to the Rwanda scheme that the last government tried to get up and going, but of course there were multiple impositions placed on it, both by domestic courts and by European courts. Frankly, is this the sort of deal that can only be struck with a country that isn't signed up to the ECHR?
Well, it's probably worth remembering the US Constitution contains very strong protections of fundamental freedoms as well. So the US government doesn't have complete, or agency of how they operate. They still have that sort of protection. But it does make very clear that, US courts will prioritize US security. And certainly the comments particularly made by Robert Jenrick, we've both had the shared pain of all the objections people will throw up to the deportation of actually quite serious offenders at times, that we do need to prioritize putting them first. And, if that, in my own view, if that means pulling out the ECHR, then that's what we should do. But it would be possible to deliver while still in the ECHR. Although it should be said, this deal appears to be very focused on convicted criminals, which does create a different balance, particularly if they're convicted of serious offences, where you can put aside many of the rights that are there because
in this country, if a government tried something like this, you'd have the human rights lawyers lining up to take on the cases of those who are going to be deported. You'd have activists on the runway trying to prevent it from being actually literally taking off. And then, of course, you have the ECHR ruling in the favour of the criminal, it seems.
Well, of course, there have been flights before to countries that have the death penalty, for instance, that Keir Starmer, back when he was leader of the opposition and before then, signed letters and fought to try and stop. I think he worked pro bono for an anti-death penalty organisation. But of course, the United States has the death penalty, so they don't suffer those same issues. Ultimately, is the issue with the UK that the people that sit on our Supreme Court have a very different ideology to those that make up a majority of the United States Supreme Court?
Yeah, I think you can look at how our legal system operates. It's worth noting we remove people to death penalty countries. There's a long-standing agreement where there's a death penalty assurance can be given, i.e. a prosecutor, the US is a good example, won't seek the death penalty, but instead will seek life imprisonment without parole for example, someone they wish to charge with first-degree murder. So that isn't a block in itself. But yes, we have had a network of laws built up around rights-based legal practices, because I was actually the person, Tom, who got the joy of having to defend a previous Labour government's law on deporting of serious offenders when David Lammy and others were objecting because they hadn't objected to flights, for example, to Romania or other parts of Europe or even other parts of the world. But they were then suddenly giving us some faux outrage about a flight to Jamaica. We also need to be clear that, when we pass laws in this country, we should then move to enforce them. And I think that's going to be one of the big things we're seeing from Donald Trump, is that actually voters and people react well. You've only got to look at that Haitian migrant in Boston being arrested to be deported, having committed serious offences the day after Trump came into power. And, you hear him, I'll tone the language down, given we're before 9 o'clock, his F Trump Biden forever really summed up what the US voters had wanted to see. And I expect it's an endorsement that Donald Trump was only too happy for the Democrats to receive.
OK, well, Kevin Foster, thank you very much indeed, former immigration minister. Let us know at home what you make of it. Do you think we should be doing something similar? Is it even possible in this country with all our rules and courts and whatever else?
But do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain. We're going to be right back in Sweden as police confirm 5 people have been shot in a school shooting. We will bring you the very latest.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As we kick off 2025, many of us might be thinking about a bit of a wardrobe refresh, especially if you're over 50 and you feel like the high street doesn't quite cater to you.
Indeed. That's where our next guest, Mel Tillett, comes in. She's in the studio with us now.
Mel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I love that you are this accidental influencer. I love that you said that's the first time.
Yeah, it is. That's the first time I've heard it.
You can have that
yes,
for free on
thank
TV.
you so much. It's quite true.
Tell us about your following. Obviously, an influencer that many people might typically think of would be someone in their teens, someone in their 20s, someone who's particularly social media savvy, using TikTok. Talk to us about your brand of influencer.
Well, our influencer, my kind of influence is over the older age group, the over 50s. For my business, I do a lot of live videos. I'll do them early in the morning at 7:30, which sounds ridiculous, but I know my ladies are up and about at that time having a cup of coffee or whatever that might be. And just being honest about day-to-day life. So my dogs are running about, my grandchildren are even sometimes in them, one thing and another. So it's just been purely by accident that I've got this really nice, loyal following, and I get lovely messages off ladies. I'll do things like, I'll tell them when I'm going for a mammogram, and I'll say, come on, everybody go for your mammogram.
That's brilliant.
All sort of health-conscious things. I've been a lot heavier than I am now, and I've slimmed down and lost some weight. I've been talking about that journey as well. And then ladies will ask me questions on the videos, and we chat about all sorts of different things. And now I'm getting messages every day, and people are loving the clothing ranges that we do. And it's just, I started off as a business, that's purely what I did, but it's turned out into this other, I get recognised places I go now, which is really weird.
It must be a huge benefit to your business as well.
We employ around about 50 people.
Wow.
And I'm quite open to my audience and saying, you know, while ever you keep buying offers, while ever you're loving our products and our clothing, you're keeping 50 people in jobs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 27 minutes past 1, we're going to bring you up to date on that news coming into us from Sweden.
Yes, police in the city of Örebro have confirmed 5 people have been shot in a school shooting in the city.
Well, the school is reportedly on lockdown and a major security operation is continuing. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us with the very latest. Mark.
Well, this operation, as you said, is still very much underway. The police, the official reports that they're putting out on their website, which are being updated regularly, say that the security situation is still ongoing, although there are reports potentially that the attacker has shot themselves, described as a masked man. Some of the reports that are coming out, a masked man that has entered the school with an automatic weapon. Now, if it is confirmed to have been an automatic weapon, clearly that's of great concern, because these are, you know, very, very damaging weapons indeed. The rapid rate of fire could cause very significant casualties. What we're being told officially at this point is that 5 people have been shot. No confirmation as yet as to what the injuries sustained by those individuals are, and indeed no information as to whether they are students or perhaps lecturers. What we believe is a further education college was a high school. It may still be a high school in some parts. We don't really have that bottomed out yet. We can show you some images, though, inside the classroom, one of the classrooms, and you can see just the legs of, we believe, students from the images that are purported to be from inside this facility that are out now on social media. And certainly from what we can see, the legs there don't appear to be legs of very young children, but potentially older students on lockdown. And as we understand it, the school is still on lockdown, but not just this school. Other schools within that immediate area have been put into lockdown as well, while the police deal with the threat out there. Because if it's one masked person, man or woman, we don't know at this stage for sure, with an automatic weapon, it's possible there may be multiple assailants here. We just don't really know at this stage. But there's a lot of political reaction coming from all sides of the political spectrum in Sweden, expressing real concern. One politician from the Left Party in Sweden has said that the descent into violence in this city is an abyss that we all need to get out of, and get out of quickly. Very significant upsurge in violent crime throughout Sweden in the last few years. Even in this city, not a particularly large city, 126,000 is the population of Örebro, which is 125 miles west of Stockholm. But even here, there have been concerns expressed by the local population at rising levels of violence.
It sounds like, from what the politician had to say, that violence has potentially been getting worse in this particular area of Sweden, in this town. You say a population of about 100,000 or so. Automatic weapon clearly can be fatal if it is an automatic weapon. At the moment, we don't know if there have been any deaths, any fatalities. Just attempted murder at this stage.
Yeah, well, the velocity of these rounds from an automatic weapon, very powerful indeed. They've got a rapid rate of fire. We've seen from school shootings in the US where automatic or semi-automatic weapons are used, very significant numbers of casualties, because, of course, someone can get off a lot of shots before they're potentially subdued, either by anyone around them or perhaps the police responding to an incident. So we don't know how long this shooting went on. These are just initial reports confirmed by the police, 5 people having been shot. Some reports, as I say, suggesting that the gunman has killed himself. We're saying himself, we're presuming it's a he. We don't know that for sure as yet. Just those local reports that suggested that it was a male wearing a mask and carrying an automatic weapon, who entered this school around about 1:30 local time. I should say as well that the Swedish authorities, the police, are going to hold a news conference around about 2:30 our time, where hopefully more information will become apparent at that particular point.
Well, we keep a close eye on this one. Mark, thanks for being across the story. Really shocking news if it does indeed involve an automatic weapon. And of course, this comes just days after another shooting in Sweden. It does seem that Sweden is suffering right now.
Yeah, in the grip of something. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Yes, a panel of international medical experts today claim there is no evidence Lucy Letby murdered a single baby. They say the deaths can be explained by natural causes and substandard care. We'll have the latest after news headlines.
Yes, Emily, thank you. In other news this hour, police are continuing to question a teenager after a 15-year-old boy died in a fatal stabbing at a school in Sheffield. The victim was named yesterday as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Tributes poured in at the scene and on social media, with flowers and candles and balloons laid on a wall outside the school. Sheffield United fans say they will pay tribute to him. The former Children's Commissioner for England has suggested knife crime involving teenagers is a national crisis that needs a national response. But Baroness Anne Longford also says, I wouldn't like to see teachers in stab vests or body cams or metal scanners. Stop and Search data reveals children as young as 10 have been found carrying bladed weapons. Last year alone, just over 100 cases of youths between 10 and 7 years old were found with weapons. The case of convicted child serial killer Lucy Letby is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice. The Criminal Cases Review Commission received an application from her lawyers yesterday. Police notes have revealed she was absent for more than a third of suspicious incidents at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others. Today, a panel of international medical experts has given alternative causes of death in several cases against Lucy Letby. Retired neonatologist Dr Shu Lee said he believed his findings on skin mottling misinterpreted by the prosecution. He said in a new paper he published in December last year, there were no cases of skin discoloration when air was injected into the veins. More updates as we get them. And actor and comedian Brian Murphy has died at the age of 92. Murphy was best known for his role in the 1970s British sitcoms Man About the House and George and Mildred. He passed away at his home in Kent on Sunday morning. Murphy's friend and agent Thomas Bowington described him as a joyful and profoundly good-hearted man. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Wet weather edging across the country today, brightening up in many western areas this afternoon with some blustery showers in the far northwest. The rain is being created by this wiggling weather front, which is, as I say, only slowly staggering across the country, provided some pretty heavy bursts of rain across southwest Scotland earlier, clearing from here now, but that rain only slowly spreading its way towards the Midlands, across northwest England. Much of East Anglia and the southeast will stay dry until dusk. Brighter skies following to much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but some showers coming into the far northwest. Pretty mild out there, particularly ahead of this weather front, but it's also really gusty. As this band of rain moves in, the wind's suddenly really picking up. That rain, though, is kind of fizzling out, so it's going to be fairly light and patchy as it crosses East Anglia in the southeast, but nevertheless, things turning a bit damp here during the evening rush hour. Drier conditions following for Wales and northern England, but lots of showers packing into Northern Ireland and western Scotland. There'll be some snow over the tops of the hills here. The wind's easing as that rain band moves through, but staying pretty breezy across northwestern areas well into the night. Elsewhere, the rain will steadily clear from the southeast, so yes, a little damp here, but then turning clearer by midnight, and then much of England and Wales actually having a dry night and a night with long, clear spells as well. A few showers will keep going into western Scotland and particularly the north of Northern Ireland. Staying breezy here, helping to keep the temperatures up. Most towns and cities dropping to about 3 or 4, but there will be some touches of frost in the countryside. So a chilly start, slightly colder tomorrow morning than this morning, but a sparkling day of sunshine for quite a few of us. Maybe the odd shower brushing through Wales, northwest England. Certainly there'll be more showers in western Scotland, but many areas fine and dry tomorrow with plenty of sunny spells. A little cooler with temperatures about average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. Train services aren't running between Ayr and either Irvine or Stranraer because of electrical supply problems. There are a number of problems in West Yorkshire. The A650 is blocked eastbound by an accident on Westgate Hill Street at East Byerley, causing queues. The A646 is partly blocked by an accident on Burnley Road at Sowerby Bridge, causing queues. And the A642 is closed each way between Flockton and Grange Moor after an accident. In London, Shepherd's Bush Green is closed for an investigation, with long delays on approaches to there. In Kent, the A226 is closed each way along London Road in Greenhithe after an accident. On the M3 in Hampshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed southbound after an accident at Junction 4A at Farnborough, with queues from Junction 4 at Camberley. And in Cornwall, the A390 is closed each way where a car's overturned between Merrymeet and St Ives. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 20-2. Now, fresh doubts have emerged over baby killer Lucy Letby's murder and attempted murder convictions as her legal team challenged her convictions this morning.
Let's take a listen to what the chair of the panel said.
I'd like to share the sympathies and condolences of members of the International Expert Panel with families of the affected infants. We understand their stress and their anguish, and our work is not meant to cause more distress. Rather, it is meant to give them comfort and assurance in knowing the truth about what really happened. We know that they want to know the truth, and that is why we are here, to tell the truth. Should they have any queries or concerns, we'd be pleased to discuss them with them.
Well, we're listening there to the words of Dr Xu Li. He's the chair of the independent review that has been done into this conviction. But let's discuss it now with the writer Christopher Snowdon. Christopher, Dr Xu Li says that we can't find any evidence to suggest that Lucy Letby killed these babies, but there were serious errors in medical care at the unit. Could it be that Lucy Letby is actually innocent after all?
Well, of course, that's always possible. And you've got a range of very experienced and eminent experts on that panel. Dr Xu Li, his own evidence was brought up in court in the original trial, although it has to be said that his objections were also dismissed in a subsequent appeal. So look, for a layman like myself, it's really impossible to decide who is right when it comes to the science. I think the defence team are doing the right thing in focusing on the scientific evidence and getting people who really know what they're talking about to come up with alternative hypotheses. But really, that's all we've got. We've got two, maybe three different sets of hypotheses here, because, of course, we also have, in some instances, the original pathologist reports, which don't align with either the prosecution's case or the new defence case. So, as I say, for a layman, it's impossible to decide who is correct here. All I would say is that justice is done not through press conferences, but through criminal trials. And what we're seeing here is, I think, an event that is aimed at changing public opinion rather than the opinion of the Criminal Cases Commission.
So, Christopher, you're not casting doubt then on the credibility of this panel of experts?
No, not at all. I don't see any reason to. As I say, Dr Xu Li himself, his evidence was cited in court the first time round. But don't forget, there were at least 8 very credible experts who gave evidence for the prosecution as well. And I by no means qualified to judge the claims being made today, but even a layman like me did notice 1 or 2 strange claims being made by Dr Xu Li. I'm not sure he's had access to quite as much evidence information as the jury did and the prosecution witnesses did.
And here's the point. I suppose Lucy Letby is either an evil murderer or the most unlucky, unfortunate and haphazard nurse in the world who just happened to be at the site of, what was it, a dozen baby deaths. And when she went on holiday, the babies stopped dying. When she came home, the babies started dying again. I mean, she's either evil or very, very unlucky.
But Tom, they're saying that they miscalculated the number of deaths, and therefore it wasn't as big a proportion of the number of deaths on the unit as first considered. Isn't that right, Christopher?
Well, they're saying there were no murders at all. They were saying that it was all natural causes. But Tom's point still holds, that you do have this sort of temporal relationship between Lucy being there, not just being on shift, but going on holiday. The baby's got better. They moved her to night shifts because they got suspicious of her, and then they moved her from night shifts to day shifts, and the death started happening in a day. This is all the stuff that came up in this very long 12-month trial, which absolutely was a circumstantial case. But the circumstantial evidence was really very strong. The scientific evidence, as I say, was extremely important. Obviously, if it can be shown that these were natural deaths, and clearly Lucy Letby was innocent, and a massive miscarriage of justice has taken place. But if they were murders, there's nobody else who could have done it but Lucy Letby. I'm sure that there'll be other people who will be responding. Perhaps Dowie Evans will respond to some of the claims made today. But in terms of this being a public debate, the prosecution side are rather at a disadvantage insofar as the doctors are no longer commenting on this case. They're busy working still in the same hospital, and most of the expert witnesses aren't commenting either. But yeah, they're going to have to bring this to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, and we'll see what they make of it. I suspect they will turn it down, because I don't think you can have a retrial just because you find a number of people who disagree with some of the evidence.
Yeah, they seem to be saying that essentially the hospital was absolutely awful, and that the care there was so bad that there's no evidence that Lucy Letby could have been the cause of these murders because the care was just so substandard. But Christopher, thank you very much indeed. Christopher Snowdon, writer. Yeah, I mean, it would be quite incredible if she did turn out to be innocent. I mean, I do trust the trial system, though.
As Christopher was saying, I mean, she went on holiday to Ibiza, babies stopped dying. She came home, babies started dying. She was moved from night shift to day shift. The babies stopped dying at night, they started dying in the day. I mean, she's either a murderer or just so very unlucky. I mean, it's possible that she's incredibly unlucky, that she's the most unlucky, unfortunate individual in the world. I just think on the balance of probability of those two outcomes, is she either really, really unlucky or did she kill those babies? I mean, goodness me, what's more likely?
Dr. Elise, he's absolutely convinced that these babies died of natural causes or just general failings. I mean, it's you know, he says that, you know, one of them, for example, could have been a dangerous bacterial infection, you know, that later was considered a preventable death.
OK,
I don't know. I mean, it's wild.
Here's the third possibility, then. She's not unlucky. She's not evil. She's just really bad at her job. I mean, it could be possible that we're looking at the worst nurse, not on a moral level, but just on a practicality level that the country has ever seen. Because whenever she was on shift, babies died. Now, she might not have deliberately called them, but she might have just been the worst nurse that we've ever seen in terms of being able to keep babies alive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a separate conversation about standards in our NHS when it comes to keeping babies alive. Perhaps the care isn't always tip-top. I know maternity care, that's for sure. Let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/yoursay. A lot of people are chatting about this, you know, down the pub, the cafe, wherever you meet your friends. Let us know your thoughts. But if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of the top Euro holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there. If you're looking for some winter sun, actually the Mediterranean's the place to find it. Plenty of sunny skies during the next few days, although Greece has seen some heavy rain, and that's clearing on Wednesday, followed by windy conditions through Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. Italy, through the Balearics, into Spain, Portugal and the Canaries, indeed plenty of sunny skies, and it remains that way until the end of the week when it does turn increasingly unsettled.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Have you noticed that more and more stores are closing? Well, last year, apparently 13,000 stores closed for the last time on the high street.
Well, experts warn the worst is still to come for our small businesses.
Well, let's talk to retail expert Jeremy Baker. Good morning to you, Jeremy. How bad is it and what can be done?
Well, nothing can be done about it. Retail is like that. It's a boom and bust operation. So last year, let's say you had a shop and it was booming. This year, the consumer can just change their mind. They don't need to come back to your shop ever again.
Well, it is sad, Jeremy, because our high streets are the beating heart of our communities, aren't they? And for many people, I know I can relate to my high street, it is such a depressing sight, walking down there and seeing them all boarded up and closed down.
But how often do you walk down that boarded up high street? I think people move on to something else. The online world is very big. Yeah. And lots of other things are very exciting. And so people, you know, the shop, I like to go to my GP in a shopping centre and get my tests done there rather than tramp off all the way to the GP, for example. And children could go to little schools in the high street. I've seen that happen already. So lots of things could happen to the high street. It could be much more a social centre. Much more kind of like pubs, coffee shops, all that. Charities. I don't see anything wrong with charities taking over. But the idea of the shop-centred high street finished, that's gone. Never coming back. Goodbye. It's not sad, it's just life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:50. Now, ministers have issued an emergency recall of 120,000 body armour plates used by the British Army.
Yes, testing discovered microscopic cracks in ageing-enhanced combat body armour, which was supposed to be swapped out back in 2023.
Yes, so Labour ministers have accused the Conservatives of failing to safely renew basic protection for troops during their time in office. Well, we can speak to the former British Army spokesperson, Mike Shearer, on this. Mike, I do hope we can get our money back.
I spoke to the MOD this morning about this, and they're keen to reassure everyone that they have withdrawn the offending worry of the enhanced body armour to check them for cracks. So not all of them are actually damaged. And I would say that actually our armour is the envy of the world. I know that our American cousins covet the technology that we have in our armour. Notwithstanding, they did tell me this morning that the MOD will not compromise on the safety of its people. I just wonder whether this government is going to compromise on the security of this nation. I mean, we had our Prime Minister on Monday say, while he was in Brussels, that they're trying hard to get to 2.5% of spend of our GDP on defence. I can tell you, without doing a strategic defence review, that is not enough. Way back in the day, when our mothers and fathers knew the real price of the freedoms of this country, they were spending 7%. And I know I can almost dictate what this review is going to say. It's going to be about technology, bots, not boots. And I'm afraid all our technology can be defeated by other technological means. And in the end, all is required, I'm afraid, is a soldier on his feet or in a tank. And I would call for the government to seriously look at reconstituting some of our old infantry and armoured units.
Well, we all know our army has never been smaller, that we can't equip our own aircraft carriers without relying on the French, that we are seeing delay after delay after delay of more spending on our armed forces. And the spending that we do say we do, the 2%, well, that includes pensions and Secret Service spending and things that actually other armed forces don't count in their defence spending. So perhaps, Mike, we're actually spending a little bit less than we think.
Oh, that's a given, I'm afraid. What you've said is absolutely true. And that 2.2% that we're spending at the moment, in inverted commas, is, you're right, is going to all sorts of other agencies, but not our first-line defence soldiers and the mass commitment that we need from our 3 services. You're right. So the breakdown of the armour is a symptom of a much, much larger problem.
No, it's a huge, huge issue. Mike Shearer, thanks so much for joining us, former British Army spokesperson. No doubt we'll speak again because this will roll on and on.
Yeah, I mean, how many times does the government have to be warned about defence spending before it actually takes it seriously? Anyway, we've got lots more coming up on today's show. Of course, police over in Sweden have now confirmed 5 people have been shot in a school shooting, triggering a massive response by rescue services. We'll have the very latest from Sweden after your weather.
Chilly start will give way to a lovely warm afternoon.
Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Wet weather edging across the country today, brightening up in many western areas this afternoon with some blustery showers in the far northwest. The rain is being created by this wiggling weather front, which is, as I say, only slowly staggering across the country, provided some pretty heavy bursts of rain across southwest Scotland earlier, clearing from here now, but that rain only slowly spreading its way towards the Midlands, across northwest England. Much of East Anglia and the southeast will stay dry until dusk. Brighter skies following to much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but some showers coming into the far northwest. Pretty mild out there, particularly ahead of this weather front, but it's also really gusty. As this band of rain moves in, the wind's suddenly really picking up. That rain, though, is kind of fizzling out, so it's going to be fairly light and patchy as it crosses East Anglia in the southeast, but nevertheless, things turning a bit damp here during the evening rush hour. Drier conditions following for Wales and northern England, but lots of showers packing into Northern Ireland and western Scotland. There'll be some snow over the tops of the hills here. The wind's easing as that rain band moves through, but staying pretty breezy across northwestern areas well into the night. Elsewhere, the rain will steadily clear from the southeast, so yes, a little damp here, but then turning clearer by midnight, and then much of England and Wales actually having a dry night and a night with long, clear spells as well. A few showers will keep going into western Scotland and particularly the north of Northern Ireland. Staying breezy here, helping to keep the temperatures up. Most towns and cities dropping to about 3 or 4, but there will be some touches of frost in the countryside. So a chilly start, slightly colder tomorrow morning than this morning, but a sparkling day of sunshine for quite a few of us. Maybe the odd shower brushing through Wales, northwest England. Certainly there'll be more showers in western Scotland, but many areas fine and dry tomorrow with plenty of sunny spells. A little cooler with temperatures about average for the time of year.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 4th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, police in Sweden confirm 5 people have been shot in this school shooting, triggering a massive response by rescue services. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has the very latest for us here in the studio.
Well, we're told that a number of schools on the campus where this shooting took place are still in lockdown, hours after a shooter shot at least 5 people.
Elsewhere, school stabbing horror in this country. Tributes are pouring in for 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose, who was stabbed to death at All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield.
Police investigations continue here at this school in Sheffield as the city mourns for 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose. We'll have more very soon.
Elsewhere in the United States, officials strike an extraordinary migrant deal with El Salvador. The country will accept deportees from any country, including dangerous criminals. Should the UK follow suit?
And the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, she's set to create a council to tackle Islamophobia. But could a new Islamophobia definition actually stifle free speech?
Well, it is just extraordinary news, is it not? We've seen in recent months not 1, not 2, but at least 3 school stabbings in the United Kingdom. And then in the middle of this programme, we learn the news of a school shooting in Sweden.
There's so many of you have been getting in touch about the state of our schools. Some of you parents who have children or grandchildren at schools where they're doing things like drills. In the case of violent episode, perhaps that is the best thing to do, that schools can be prepared for these types of incidents if they're becoming almost the norm. And is that where we are now as a country?
I worry, because if we remember back to Southport stabbings, that was, of course, targeted at a Taylor Swift dance class. But it could so easily have been 7 days prior when Axel Rudakabana was hiring a taxi to go to his previous school. We could have seen a mass school stabbing take place then too. It's just case after case after case of this.
Yeah. I mean, is it really that we need metal detectors in every single school, primary schools included, nurseries? Do we need police officers outside schools now? Do we need private security maintained at all hours? I mean, are we really at that stage?
It's not the fault of the knives that children are stabbing each other. It's the fault of the people who are doing the stabbing. And if we get rid of the knives, they'll use clubs. If you get rid of the clubs, they'll use pointy sticks. I mean, it's ridiculous.
You can ban knives entirely and it would do nothing. But in Sweden, unfortunately, they've got hold of... the suspect has got hold of a gun, an automatic weapon, which could be even more serious. gbnews.com/your say. Please do get in touch throughout the show, but let's get the headlines with Tatiana.
Emily, thank you. The top stories. Police are continuing to question a teenager after a 15-year-old boy died in a fatal stabbing at a school in Sheffield. The victim was named yesterday as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Tributes poured in at the scene and on social media, with flowers, candles and balloons laid on a wall outside the school. The former Children's Commissioner for England suggested knife crime involving teenagers is a national crisis that needs a national response. But Baroness Anne Longfield also says, I wouldn't like to see teachers in stab vests or body cams or metal scanners. Stop and search data reveals children as young as 10 have been found carrying bladed weapons. Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury Richard Fuller spoke to GB News.
I lived in America for some time, and they had even worse instances of school shootings. And it's such a tragedy. It traumatizes local communities because parents then have to send their kids to school the very next day or the week after. And it's always going to be in the back of your mind, can it happen another time at school or another local school? I just worry that we always think national government's got the answer, that somehow if we put some people in Whitehall to think about it, the answer will come. Actually, maybe we should just make sure that head teachers have that power. They know what's going on in their local school. They know where there may be a risk. Maybe we should give more power to people who are, on the front line, closer than expecting national policies to be the answer.
Now, just briefly to that breaking news that police in the city of Örebro in Sweden have confirmed 5 people have been shot in a school shooting in the city. A police statement says the extent of the injuries is unclear. They also say the charges are currently attempted murder, arson and aggravated weapons offence. Mark White has all the details after the headlines. Elsewhere, the case of convicted child serial killer Lucy Letby is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice. The Criminal Cases Review Commission received an application from her lawyers yesterday. Police notes have revealed she was absent for more than a third of suspicious incidents at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others. Today, a panel of international medical experts has given alternative causes of death in several cases against Lucy Letby. Retired neonatologist Dr Shu Lee said he believed his findings on skin mottling were misinterpreted by the prosecution. He said in a new paper he published in December last year, there were no cases of skin discoloration when air was injected into the veins. More updates throughout the day here on GB News. China has retaliated after the US imposed 10% tariffs on its goods. Not long after the US taxes on China began this morning, China said it was imposing 10% tariffs on American crude oil and agricultural machinery. There will also be a 15% tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas. Well, that's as President Donald Trump made the announcement last night that the US will delay imposing tariffs on Mexico for a month after agreeing a border deal with the Mexican president. Global markets slumped earlier in the day yesterday following Trump's announcements and his stated intention to impose tariffs on the EU, but hinted he may not hit the UK. And finally, the government has announced a major trial aiming to transform breast cancer screening with artificial intelligence, with almost 700,000 women expected to take part. It's hoped the technology will help specialists catch cancer earlier, as well as freeing up radiologists in a bid to slash waiting times. According to Breast Cancer Now, around 55,000 women and 400 men are diagnosed with breast cancer every year in the UK. Secondary Care Minister Karen Smith told GB News the National Institute for Health Research will start recruiting these 700,000 women as soon as possible.
The difference it makes is having less clinicians involved in the work of the scanning and looking at those results, using AI to do that, freeing up more clinical time and making that happen faster. We screen 2 million women a year, so we should get to that number fairly quickly and then be able to analyse those results. But it's really exciting use of AI, because I think we talk about AI in sort of general terms, but being able to bring something of this size to this number of women, I think is a really exciting development on World Cancer Day.
And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 8 minutes past 2, we have breaking news just coming into us from Sweden.
Yes, police in the city of Örebro have confirmed 5 people have been shot in a school shooting in the city. Now, the school is reportedly still on lockdown and a major security operation is continuing.
Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us now in the studio with the very latest. Mark, what do we know?
Well, there are now reports emerging that several people may have been killed in this shooting at what we believe was a further education college within a wider campus that also incorporates a number of schools, all of them still on lockdown as this policing operation continues. Again, some reports not confirmed by the police that the gunman may well have shot himself. There are reports that a masked man entered this further education college and began firing with an automatic weapon. Now, what the police in Orebro have confirmed is that 5 people have been shot. They've been taken to area hospitals, but they have not confirmed the significance or the seriousness of their injuries. We should say that authorities at the scene in Orebro are going to hold a news conference in about half an hour's time or so. You're looking at video there for those watching on television, and I'll describe for those listening on GB News Radio, that shows people within one of the classrooms at the school. There is sound on that as well, that we might be able to get the sort of raid alarms that are sounding. You can see flashing images as well. You can really just see people's legs there. But what we're told is that you can see words on the screen there as well. Those words have just been translated to me that say basically, we don't know anything. We've been sitting for an hour in Orebro, and that video was taken within the last hour or so. People still on lockdown in their classrooms, because what happens in any incident of mass shooting when there is one or more gunmen involved is the police will move in, but they have to then systematically search every area of the buildings. And we're talking a very large campus here that doesn't just have this further education, adult education college, but also has other schools with younger pupils as well. All will have to be searched, and they'll have to be searched by specialist armed teams who can deal with an individual. There are reports that police officers were shot at. Police have denied earlier reports that police were injured in this incident, but police, we understand, were shot at during this operation as they push forward and try to clearly clear out the building, ensure that those that are inside are not a threat, but are actually, you know, students and staff within the school that are sheltering in place, and then they try to get them out to a place of safety.
And gun crime has become a real issue in Sweden.
Well, not just gun crime, violent crime in general. There's a very, very significant violent crime problem. In fact, one left-wing politician from one of the main parties there has tweeted that the descent into violence is an abyss that the nation needs to get out of, and needs to get out of very quickly. There have been many instances of serious violence, murders, bombings, shootings, stabbings. Much of it has been linked to the surge in the immigrant population in Sweden, particularly concerns over the number of asylum seekers in that country as well, with many politicians in Sweden saying that a lot of the violence has been linked to that. We've got to add, of course, as we always do, we have no indication that what has unfolded at this school is in any way, shape or form related to immigrant violence in any way at this stage. We await information from the police, and as I say, hopefully within the next half an hour, we'll get more in the way of information. Although, sadly, as we often find out, they are very sort of rudimentary details, circumspect in what they can say with an unfolding situation. But we hopefully might get at least a handle on how many people have been caught up in this.
You'll be following that for us, of course. Mark White, thank you very much indeed, our Home and Security Editor.
Yes, well, and of course, Mark will be back as soon as we learn that update from the police at past. But in the UK, a 15-year-old boy has died after being stabbed in a school in Sheffield.
The young man, he's been named as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Now, a teenager has since been arrested on suspicion of his murder, and floral tributes continue to mount up outside the school in Sheffield.
Well, we're joined now by our Yorkshire and Humber reporter, Anna Riley, who is at the scene. Anna, tell us more.
Yes, well, these tributes just continue to mount. People coming from the community, as well as parents and students from the school, to pay tribute to 15-year-old Harvey Wilgoose, who was fatally stabbed yesterday here at All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield. Police were called to the scene at 17 minutes past 12, but sadly Harvey could not be saved. As you've mentioned, there's a 15-year-old boy that's still in police custody, currently being questioned. But it's clear from these tributes that are being left just how loved Harvey was by his friends, by his family. There's that many floral tributes that have gathered that police are now advising people that want to come and pay their respects and to lay tributes to go inside the school and have that moment of reflection and moment of mourning. But certainly this has touched everybody in the community, and as we have more updates on this as police continue their investigations, we will update you.
Anna Riley there outside the school there where Harvey Wilgoose was stabbed to death. We're going to turn our attention now to the United States because officials there have managed to strike an extraordinary migrant deal with El Salvador. El Salvador is now going to accept deportees.
Well, described as the most unprecedented and extraordinary migratory agreement anywhere in the world, the deal will see El Salvador take the migrants of all nationalities from the US, as well as violent criminals who are now in American jails.
And this comes as President Trump also secures border protection agreements from both Canada and Mexico. OK, well, joining us now from the United States is Lee Cohen. Lee, thank you very much indeed. I mean, Donald Trump said he was going to make this his top priority. It's clear he's doing it.
Well, indeed, and thank you very much for having me on this morning. My heart goes out to the victims of the crimes in Sweden and the stabbing that you just mentioned. But on a bright note, the U.S. is tackling violent crime in an unprecedented way. The strategy genius behind the Trump-Rubio agreement is brilliant. Not only does it address the alarming rise of gang violence and criminal activity by expelling dangerous offenders at a fraction of the cost to American taxpayers, but it also fosters international cooperation against crime. El Salvador, under President Bukele, has already shown remarkable success in slashing crime rates through aggressive anti-gang policies. By outsourcing incarceration, the U.S. can direct resources towards more pressing domestic issues, while El Salvador gains economically from the arrangement. It's a win-win-win all around.
It's extraordinary to see the precipitous fall in homicide rates in El Salvador over the last 5 years. It was once amongst the highest in Latin America, and now it's the lowest not just in Latin America, but I think they actually got their homicide rate below that of the United States. I think only Canada is lower in the Americas than El Salvador now, which is extraordinary from a country that was once gripped by such violent gang crime.
Absolutely right, Tom. El Salvador has seen a significant decline in homicide rates since Bukele's administration declared state of emergency in March 2020. The country's murder rate dropped dramatically, with reports indicating a historic low of 7.8 homicides per 100,000 people in 2022. Historic lows.
No, it's extraordinary. But Lee, what is the American side of the deal? Is there money going from the US to El Salvador? What's the other half of this?
There is money going to El Salvador, and that's why I said it's a win-win. But it's money that's well spent because, with exchange rates, it really is more beneficial for El Salvador. It's a small investment for the United States, but it represents a big gain for El Salvador. And of course, there have been the usual dissenters regarding this, but they should be reminded that every country has the right to protect its citizens. Of El Salvador.
Lee, just on that point, very quickly. I don't know if you know, but here in the United Kingdom, there was a big effort to try and make a Rwanda sort of deportation scheme with that African nation, and it got held up so much in the courts. There was so much opposition, and the new Labour government dropped it completely. Is there no sort of pushback in terms of legal issues or any human rights issues or anything like that that might stop this from happening?
Well, indeed, of course, there are on both of those fronts. And I thought of your Rwandan deal as this was playing out because I followed that rather closely. But Emma, as I was saying before, every country has the right to protect its citizens. And if El Salvador is willing to take on this responsibility, it shows a level of cooperation that should be commended. Regarding legality, which you brought up, international agreements are negotiated with the understanding that they must adhere to international law. But the priority should be on protecting, for the United States, on protecting American lives first.
And ultimately, the ultimate arbiter in the United States is the Supreme Court. There is no higher legal authority in the United States.
Whereas here
we have submitted to a higher legal authority. But Lee Cohen, thanks so much for joining us and talking through an extraordinary deal on the other side of the Atlantic.
Well, there you go. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up. Yes, Rayner rules on Islam. The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is set to create a council to tackle Islamophobia. But could a new Islamophobia definition stifle free speech?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Underestimate what you did, because to do it in their backyard as well, I bet they weren't happy about it, were they, Brad?
No, definitely not. Well, it makes it all the more sweeter. So they're usually pretty dominant in a two-man event, but four-man's usually where we can challenge them. And yeah, we managed to do it yesterday and put down 2 solid runs. And yeah.
So yeah, funding was a big issue for us in the last quad, but because of our results recently, we've picked up a lot more funding from UK Sport. So we're well funded now, and but yeah, the Bob is in the back of the van behind us, so we're driving it down to St Moritz as we speak. So yeah, that's how it all works in the background in bobsleigh.
Brad, you're the pilot, correct? So you're up front.
Yeah.
Now, what happens? I always wonder, because I remember seeing John Noakes on. Do you remember John Noakes on Blue Peter when he fell out of the Bob and he ended up showing the back of his backside on TV because he had a big scar on there? So you've got the brake man. You're at the front. So where are you then, Aaron? Are you what number are you?
So I'm number 3. Yeah.
Right. So what do you do there? Is it just a matter of it's the running power is what it's all about to get off to a good start, and then you can sit and enjoy the ride?
Yeah, that's it. So for number 2 and myself, number 3, it's all about getting that Bob off the line and then just zipping it up to as high a speed as we can, basically. Getting in, staying low, having good aerodynamics, and staying still and let Brad do the work.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable position for them, because we're bending them and twisting them into quite an uncomfortable position to get as aerodynamic as possible. And when you've got 6 times G's pushing you through that, is not... Yeah, not
definitely
fun.
Stiff back this morning, that's for sure.
Because I'm just thinking where me and Eamon would sit. Is it 2 and 3, or would he go at number 4? What do you fancy?
I would be too frightened to do that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, 2:23 is the time. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain. And Angela Rayner, yes, she's got a big plan. She's going to team up with the Conservative Dominic Grieve to form a new council on Islam.
Of course, Dominic Grieve stood against the Conservative Party in the 2019 general election as an independent, but that's by the by.
Yes, a few of you commented on the fact we called him a heavyweight.
It was
in the last hour.
He was a big beast, but I think it's fair to say that he parted ways with the Conservative Party some time ago.
Left, is it? Yes.
But it's expected to have 16 members, this council, all in all, and it's going to focus on what they say is a rise of Islamophobia in the UK.
Yeah, and one of the key issues here, one of the sticking points here, is the definition of Islamophobia. What exactly does it mean? Does it mean a fear of Islam? Does it mean a fear of Muslims? Does it mean criticism of Islam as a doctrine, as an ideology, as a political ideology even?
Well, this is the problem.
Does it mean objecting to the hijab or the burqa?
Because Islam is a religion. It's different from Judaism. The Jewish people are a people. That's an ethnicity.
Yeah.
Whereas Islam, it's an ideology. It's a religion. I mean, I suppose you can have Islamophobia in the same way that you can have Christianophobia. But if we had a definition of Christianophobia, would we lock Richard Dawkins up behind bars? Would we say that the God Delusion could not be published as a book because this offends Christians? Clearly, that's palpably insane. Of course, you should have the right to offend a religion. You should have the right to criticise a religion. And I wonder if this
But penalising someone, for example, for the fact that they happen to be Muslim, well, that's already illegal.
Yes.
That's already an offence.
And there's a difference in these terms,
Anti-Muslim hatred is picking on someone because they are a Muslim.
Yes.
Very different from someone saying, I don't like Islam.
Exactly, and there's the difference. You attack an idea or you attack an individual. Any free society, you would think, people should have the right to attack an idea.
I hope Angela Rayner knows what she's getting into here, because very intelligent people have looked at this issue, have looked at the definition, have thought about the issues around whether we'll be bringing in a blasphemy law through the back door. They've looked at the complexities. Does Angela Rayner really gauge how tricky this issue is and the potential repercussions on free speech?
I'm not sure that there is going to be any way that you can deliver a so-called Islamophobia definition.
I mean, I don't particularly like the word,
No, I don't like the word. I mean, I think the Conservative Party refused to use the word Islamophobia.
You're right.
And were using for a time the term anti-Muslim bigotry, because that can pinpoint when people, outrageously discriminate against individuals and people.
Yeah.
But the term Islamophobia, too often, can be taken to mean criticism or mockery of ideas.
Which is ridiculous. Dr Adrian Hilton is with us, Research Fellow at Buckingham University. Thank you very much for joining us on this one. We've just been chatting away about this. A very complicated issue. I mean, do you think Angela Rayner, with this new council, are going to get it right?
It remains to be seen. I want to push back on something, though, very, very sensitively, if I may. I'm pleased that Dominic Grieve is chairing this. He's a man I've known for 20 years. He is cognizant of the theological, religious dimensions of it, as well as the political and sociological. He's not a pushover. He's a deeply thinking man who is aware also, I might add, of the more malign undertones that run through some ethnic minority groups. In fact, he's criticised them in the past for endemic corruption and got into trouble for it. So he isn't naive about the complexities here.
But Adrian, just on that point, is it true that he wrote the foreword to the previous definition of Islamophobia, which had quite a lot of problems?
Yes, he wrote the foreword to it, welcoming it as a contribution to a debate.
Okay.
If you write a foreword for something, you're not necessarily agreeing with all the content of it. He welcomed the debate, was it 5 or 6 years ago? The debate's moved on, clearly. There's been pushback from Sikhs, there's been pushback from free speech advocates and educationalists. The debate's moved on. So in a way, Angela Rayner, by convening this council, is acknowledging that the APPG definition needs to move on as well, or in fact be retracted somehow.
It's difficult, though, is it not? Because the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn adopted this definition as the party's own definition of Islamophobia. And so if this council's going to say, well, the world's moved on from this was clearly a bad piece of work or an inappropriate piece of work in a free and liberal society, then the Labour Party is going to need to look at its own internal definitions and rules.
Yes, and that's probably what will happen, for the simple reason that the debate does move on. When we know more, I mean, for example, Islam being spread by the sword, for example, the Sikhs have pushed back on that significantly. It is their own history to say that they experienced subjugation, that Islam persecuted them and spread by the sword. So Labour is already wrestling with these complex dynamics. And I just want to welcome as well the fact that this council is happening at all is a sign that things have moved on. The easiest thing for Labour to have done would have been to adopt the APP definition and introduce it into statute law.
But Adrian, they could potentially strengthen the definition, couldn't they? They could say that, I don't know, being offensive about the wearing of a burqa or is now illegal.
It depends, of course, who Angela Rayner puts on this council. There are 16 members of it. Dominic Grieve isn't going to agree to chair a council of 16 censorious-minded Muslims who all want more Sharia creep. He's not going to do that. If this council has a representative, for example, from the Free Speech Association or a Sikh and other scholars who are aware of the complexities, it could be a good thing. Don't prejudge the outcome of this council, not least because if it's something preordained, if people sense it's preordained, it's not going to work. There'll be pushback on it. There will be a demand for a Sikh council to push back on it. And Angela Rayner will be aware of those sorts of things.
That's a really, really good point. I hope that they put some pretty fervent atheists on the panel, as well as those that represent religious minorities.
That's a very important point. There ought to be somebody from the National Secular Society on this as well. And if it's convened in a way that is balanced, good could come of it.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I still am a little worried, but I hope you're right that they'll be sensible about this and they'll get all voices around the table. Dr. Adrian Hilton, fantastic to have you on the channel, research fellow at the Buckingham University.
Well, we're going to discuss this further with the founder of the Oxford Institute for British Islam, Dr Taj Haji. Dr Taj, thanks for joining us. There are some real concerns over what any move towards a potential definition of Islamophobia could do to a liberal society.
Absolutely. I don't think Islamophobia is actually the correct term. The correct term would be anti-Muslim prejudice. Islamophobia is a catch-all thing. Not all Muslims are, it's not a racist thing. You have black Muslims, you have white Muslims, you have brown Muslims, whatever you have. And this idea of Islamophobia is just a catch-all phrase to prevent a real free speech. I, as a Muslim, encourage and welcome criticisms and dialogue honestly about my faith. This idea you can't talk about someone wearing a hijab or a niqab or someone with a big beard or whatever the case may be, that's not anti-Muslim. Everyone has the right to express their views. We live in a society that lauds free speech and thinks it is our historic rights from Magna Carta onwards to have this idea of free expression. And we don't need in the 21st century to novel this, to restrict it, and to make it more difficult for people to have honest dialogue. In fact, when we don't have frank discussions, we have antipathy, hostility, and resentment building up. And in fact, we need a pressure valve, a release valve. People can discuss these things openly without being called a racist.
Sounds like you should be on this council. I mean, you have a very balanced. It sounds like you should be on this council to come up with this.
Well, we will never have people like me because firstly, I'm not a Labour man, and I don't care about that so much. I care about Muslims and being British, and I think it's important that we have people, as your previous speaker said, people who are willing to rock the boat. Now, Rayner and company, they will have their disciples and their devotees on this council, despite what your previous speaker said. They will have their disciples and their devotees, and I think we need honest, fearless people out there, and Muslims especially, people like myself, but others as well, who can say honestly and openly, listen. Yes, there is anti-Muslim prejudice, there is anti-Muslim feeling in this country, and we need to firstly discover the roots. I mean, for example, who does most of the so-called violent terrorism in this country? It's not Sikhs, it's not Jews, it's not Hindus, it's Muslims. And we need to call a spade a spade. And I think this is the point here. So yes, if we want to address anti-Muslim resentment and hostility in this country, we Muslims must put up our hands first and say, listen, yes, we have done this, but this is not what our religion says. This is what fanatics and extremists say. And for example, during the Crusades, when people were slaughtered in the name of Christ, in the name of Christianity, was that because Jesus Christ told them so? No, they subverted the religion to say, listen, this is what Christianity is. So when these Islamic extremists and radicals come along and does these crazy things, we need to call them
Dr.
out.
Taj, you make your point very strongly. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Founder of the Oxford Institute for British Islam, Dr. Taj Haji. Well, there you go. Let us know your thoughts.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come. Indeed, much more on this situation in Sweden. Police confirm 5 people have been shot in a school shooting, triggering a massive response by rescue services. We're going to have the very latest updates after your headlines.
Tom, thank you. Police are continuing to question a teenager after a 15-year-old boy died in a fatal stabbing at a school in Sheffield. The victim was named yesterday as Harvey Wilgoose, a student at All Saints Catholic School. Tributes poured in at the scene and on social media with flowers, candles and balloons laid on a wall outside the school. The former Children's Commissioner for England has suggested knife crime involving teenagers is a national crisis that needs a national response. But Baroness Anne Longford also says, I wouldn't like to see teachers in stab vests or body cams or metal scanners. Stop and search data reveals children as young as 10 have been found carrying bladed weapons. And to that other breaking news today, that police in the city of Örebro in Sweden have confirmed 5 people have been shot in a school shooting in the city. The school is reportedly on lockdown and a major security operation continues. A police statement says the extent of the injuries is still unclear. They also say the charges are currently attempted murder, arson and aggravated weapons offence. And the case of convicted child serial killer Lucy Letby is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice. Police notes have revealed she was absent for more than a third of suspicious incidents at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Lucy Letby was convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others. Today, a panel of international medical experts has given alternative causes of death in several cases against Lucy Letby. Retired neonatologist Dr Shu Lee said he believed his findings on skin mottling were misinterpreted by the prosecution. Opening the press conference today, MP Sir David Davis described Letby's convictions as one of the major injustices of modern times. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Aaron Armstrong has your next update at 3 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Wet weather edging across the country today, brightening up in many western areas this afternoon with some blustery showers in the far northwest. The rain is being created by this wiggling weather front, which is, as I say, only slowly staggering across the country, provided some pretty heavy bursts of rain across southwest Scotland earlier, clearing from here now, but that rain only slowly spreading its way towards the Midlands, across northwest England. Much of East Anglia and the southeast will stay dry until dusk. Brighter skies following to much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but some showers coming into the far northwest. Pretty mild out there, particularly ahead of this weather front, but it's also really gusty. As this band of rain moves in, the wind's suddenly really picking up. That rain, though, is kind of fizzling out, so it's going to be fairly light and patchy as it crosses East Anglia in the southeast, but nevertheless, things turning a bit damp here during the evening rush hour. Drier conditions following for Wales and Northern England, but lots of showers packing into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. There'll be some snow over the tops of the hills here. The wind's easing as that rain band moves through, but staying pretty breezy across northwestern areas well into the night. Elsewhere, the rain will steadily clear from the southeast, so yes, a little damp here, but then turning clearer by midnight, and then much of England and Wales actually having a dry night and a night with long, clear spells as well. A few showers will keep going into western Scotland and particularly the north of Northern Ireland. Staying breezy here, helping to keep the temperatures up. Most towns and cities dropping to about 3 or 4, but there will be some touches of frost in the countryside. So a chilly start, slightly colder tomorrow morning than this morning, but a sparkling day of sunshine for quite a few of us. Maybe the odd shower brushing through Wales, northwest England. Certainly there'll be more showers in western Scotland, but many areas fine and dry tomorrow with plenty of sunny spells. A little cooler with temperatures about average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. Train services are suspended between Girvan and Kilmarnock and also between Ayr and both Irvine and Stranraer because of electrical supply problems. In West Yorkshire, the A646 is partly blocked by an accident on Burnley Road at Sowerby Bridge, causing queues. Also in West Yorkshire, the A642 is closed each way between Flockton and the Grangemore roundabout after an accident. In Suffolk, the A1120 is closed westbound from Yoxford to Peasenhall after an accident. In London, Shepherd's Bush Green is closed because of an investigation. Between Goldhawk Road and Uxbridge Road, there are long delays on approaches to there. On the M3 in Hampshire, there are southbound delays towards junction 4A at Farnborough after an accident earlier. And in Somerset, the A358 is blocked eastbound in the retail park and the M5 east of Taunton. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 20 minutes to 3. Now we're returning to the very serious news coming out of Sweden.
Yes, because police in the city of Örebro have confirmed 5 people have been shot in a school shooting in the city.
The school is reportedly still on lockdown and a major security operation is continuing. GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now. Mark, what do we know?
Well, there is a police news conference that is taking place as we speak. Police saying that one of the 5 people that they're confirming to have been shot is believed to have been the attacker. But as I say, this is just underway. We're getting a translation. As we get more information, we'll bring that to you. But we have also just obtained some new video. It was video shot by one of the students on this campus, filming while these shots take place. Just a warning that, of course, some of our audience may find the following images distressing.
Utan jacka, jag ser skjuten nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning, folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning! Oh my god.
And she's shouting there, oh my God, obviously you can hear that, but she's shouting there's been a shooting, there's been a shooting, people are being shot. And we've also obtained other video, which is in one of the classrooms. Several school buildings within this very large campus of over 2,000 people are all in lockdown, we believe, still in lockdown at the moment, although that will become clearer in that police news conference. And that video, you can quite clearly, as you will hear shortly, the alarm bells sounding as people are in there and lockdown. Let's take a look. You can only imagine just how terrifying that was for those students within that classroom and the many other classrooms in these various schools on this campus, that when that video was taken, it was about an hour into the lockdown, and they were still saying, we've been told nothing, we don't know what's going on. But they will have been able to hear these gunshots because they were very loud, obviously, and they sound, certainly to me, like they were probably a semi-automatic weapon that was firing there, because quite rapid fire, a number of shots that were fired as this young student was filming.
Now, this is all obviously incredibly distressing. Sweden, we didn't used to think of as a particularly violent country. We didn't think of Sweden as somewhere where things like this happen. And yet, a school shooting today with 5 people severely affected, it could be more, we don't know. And this is just hot on the heels of, a few days ago, a man being shot in Sweden after an incident of burning a Quran?
Well, yes, there are very significant rises in all types of violent crime in Sweden over the last few years. We don't know, as I say, at this stage, because it's far too early on, what the sort of underlying factors of this particular school shooting were. Reports that the gunman was wearing some kind of face mask or balaclava when they entered that school and began shooting. As I say, because this news conference is underway in Swedish, we're waiting for translations to come through, and hopefully within the coming minutes we'll have a clearer idea, hopefully, of what the police know at this very early stage. But very frightening indeed, even in a country, a small country like Sweden, which has seen very significant levels of violence, to see this school shooting, a mass school shooting, something akin to what they see in the United States all too frequently, sadly, is very shocking indeed to see that played out in a European city.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, we usually associate school shootings with the United States, where guns are freely available, but I understand guns are pretty available on the continent.
Well, they are, and, you know, they are in Sweden as well, because many people in this country, you will have guns that are in the hands of the likes of the farming community. In Sweden, you've got big areas of open forest and wildlife that hunters, you know, have arms for as well. Automatic weapons or semi-automatic weapons, I'm not sure how freely available they are, but of course anywhere on the continent of Europe, because you can pretty much drive through borders unchecked, there's weaponry out there. We see it time after time in attacks in France or Germany, where weapons often have originated in the likes of the Balkans, weapons that are, you know, weapons that were the result of the Balkans War that found their way now into the civilian population.
Brussels was the hotspot, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
The AK-47 in Europe, because you can just freely move your weapons around without checks, unless the police get onto you, of course.
And you've had a situation where many of the weapons used in the Balkans War got sort of deactivated, then were sold in shops as kind of memorabilia, and then reactivated again.
Yeah, we think of Europe as being a lot safer than America, but actually, I mean, per person, I think it's Switzerland that has the most guns, more guns per person than the United States. And actually, frankly, our pistol shooting team in the Olympics has to fly to Switzerland to train because they're not allowed to train with pistols in this country. Our laws are so tight. But we don't think of the European Union as being particularly gun-heavy, even though actually, thinking about it, of course it is. And of course you can move a weapon from Romania to Portugal without a single check or balance in the way.
Yes, absolutely. And just to say as well, more information coming through on this press conference. The police apparently do not rule out that there are more suspected perpetrators. They have told the press conference, so as a result, it's likely that those schools are still in lockdown, although I've not had that confirmed in the lines that are coming out. Police will not comment or wouldn't comment on whether the injured included students or teachers at this stage. The municipality, it says, urges the public to call the regional switchboard to find out if their relatives are among the injured. They've also set up a crisis or crisis support sites, as you would imagine. In any mass casualty event like this, you got the numbers that you can ring, and obviously these are numbers that are made available to people in that locality, and the crisis operations, the sort of triaging of the wounded first of all before taking them to area hospitals. We were told that a number of area hospitals had their accident and emergency departments cleared out to deal what they were expecting was a significant number of casualties. All the police are saying at this point is that 5 people were shot. I don't know if that's been updated at all since that press conference started, but they say they suspect that the gunman, the attacker, is among those shot.
But we don't know if there have been any fatalities yet.
As yet, no, but there are reports in the local media suggesting that there have been fatalities. We're still waiting on translations coming out.
But I mean, the response is clearly huge. Huge numbers of police vehicles, huge numbers of police officers, rescue, ambulance, etc. You say the hospital's being cleared out, the A&E's being cleared out to make way for some of the victims of this shooting. I mean, it is just quite incredible. You just would not expect this type of thing to happen in clearly broad daylight, a snowy day, a bleak sort of landscape, and then you've got the alarm bells ringing and people having to take cover under their desks.
But so far, actually quite little information, other than the confirmation that the attacker is a man. They're not confirming the age or the status of those injured, or indeed the age of the attacker. We know that 5 people are in hospital, but we don't know if anyone has been killed. I mean, there is a huge amount, well, there are a huge amount of question marks.
Is this what the Swedish authorities are quite hesitant to put out details, are they?
No, I think it's coming. It's just coming. It requires translation. Okay. So for people to translate and then to put these lines out, it can take a little while to get that information out. I don't think they are necessarily withholding anything, although, of course, once the news conference is over, we may find that there's lots of questions that are being reported in the local media that the police are not confirming at this stage. What we understand, though, is that at this campus, there are a number of schools. There are younger students at the schools, and then we believe there's further education college and adult education. Now, the suggestion is that this was an adult education facility that was, according to what we're reading, attended by adults over 20 that may have had other, special needs in that sense. So apparently what I'm reading here is Swedish classes for immigrants, vocational training and programmes for people with intellectual disabilities may all have been within the sort of this adult education facility within this wider campus.
For people who are struggling in one way or another, who need some extra support in their adult years. You dug out a clip of the horrifying moment where you can hear the gunshots.
Well, I think if we've still got that, again with the sort of warning to our audience that clearly these are quite distressing images to listen to. This young woman, a student who took this video, very alarmed and panicked at what she's seeing as the shooting unfolds. So with that warning, let's just have a quick look at that video again.
Utan jacka, jag ser gå ner till henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning, folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning! Oh my god!
And you can hear there the rapidity of the fire there, that, some suggestions of an automatic weapon. At the very least, I think it was an automatic weapon. Were very fast shots that were ringing out and clearly very loud as well. So in the schools around this campus, people will have heard those shots. And as we saw from the other video of people cowering under their desks, posting on social media that actually, it's an hour in and they still haven't been told anything. That's not unusual, of course, because the police have to very methodically work their way and carefully through the school premises. And from that news conference, the police saying they are not ruling out the possibility of other perpetrators as well, although they're suggesting that the attacker that they know about, the one attacker they know about, was among those shot.
We know that incidents like this can elicit a huge public response. I'm sure there'll be a lot of anger among the Swedish population that this could have happened at a school, an adult education facility, seemingly out of the blue, although we may well become more aware of motivations behind it.
So just a bit more from the press conference. 5 people taken to Orebro University Hospital, 4 of whom have undergone surgery, of which 2 are fully operated on and stable, so they've gone through the surgical process. The surgeons have managed to stabilise those particular victims. One of those who underwent surgery is seriously injured, and the one who didn't undergo surgery is slightly injured. So 4 people that have gone through surgery, and it seems 2 of those have been stabilised, 1 other that's gone into surgery described as seriously injured, and a 4th person more lightly injured. The police are also saying they're working to find out the motive behind this crime. So, of course, they branded it a crime. That's obvious for all to see. They're still working on a motive.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Mark White. We've come to the end of the show. You've been watching Good Afternoon Britain. We're going to leave you because it's Martin Daubney who's up next.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Wet weather edging across the country today, brightening up in many western areas this afternoon with some blustery showers in the far northwest. The rain is being created by this wiggling weather front, which is, as I say, only slowly staggering across the country, provided some pretty heavy bursts of rain across southwest Scotland earlier, clearing from here now, but that rain only slowly spreading its way towards the Midlands, across northwest England. Much of East Anglia and the southeast will stay dry until dusk. Brighter skies following to much of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but some showers coming into the far northwest. Pretty mild out there, particularly ahead of this weather front, but it's also really gusty. As this band of rain moves in, the wind's suddenly really picking up. That rain, though, is kind of fizzling out, so it's going to be fairly light and patchy as it crosses East Anglia in the southeast, but nevertheless, things turning a bit damp here during the evening rush hour. Drier conditions following for Wales and northern England, but lots of showers packing into Northern Ireland and western Scotland. There'll be some snow over the tops of the hills here. The wind's easing as that rain band moves through, but staying pretty breezy across northwestern areas well into the night. Elsewhere, the rain will steadily clear from the southeast, so yes, a little damp here, but then turning clearer by midnight, and then much of England and Wales actually having a dry night and a night with long, clear spells as well. A few showers will keep going into western Scotland and particularly the north of Northern Ireland. Staying breezy here, helping to keep the temperatures up. Most towns and cities dropping to about 3 or 4, but there will be some touches of frost in the countryside. So a chilly start, slightly colder tomorrow morning than this morning, but a sparkling day of sunshine for quite a few of us. Maybe the odd shower brushing through Wales, northwest England. Certainly there'll be more showers in western Scotland, but many areas fine and dry tomorrow with plenty of sunny spells. A little cooler with temperatures about average for the time of year.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers